Here we go.
I'm Radio Roger, and you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 353.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from 706 in... What did I say?
You missed out studio.
Yeah, studio. I should probably say studio. I know what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to keep going. And then I'm going to fix this in post, too. And it'll sound so slick because I'll even use the name of the episode.
That's the official motto of the APG these days.
I'll fix
it in post.
I need to get a t-shirt.
Yes.
I'll fix it in post.
Just never gets done.
I like that you're just going to let it continue playing anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just taking a little break here, thinking about...
Drinking beer.
Cheers.
Eating cheese. I'm just... Wow, what's that quote? Not bad.
That's very good. I like it. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Hello, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast where we talk about aviation news and add our commentary, and we also answer your fantastic feedback. And joining me today to help us do that is from her lakeside studio in South Carolina, a doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument rated pilot, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff. Good to see you. And yes, I finally did make it back to my studio this afternoon. It was kind of a busier than usual Thursday for me at work. It's usually my easy day or half day, but glad to be here now. Looking forward to a great show.
We're glad you're here as well. And also joining us from his recording studio in the English countryside, professional photographer, former RAF RAAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London. It's Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff. Oh, isn't it great to be back on? And Christmas is coming, and the geese are getting fat. And I'm not feeling very well.
Is he talking about me? All right. Well, great to see you again, Captain Nick. And also joining us from the studio here in Baltimore, Maryland, in the Inner Harbor. Well, not in the Inner Harbor, at the Inner Harbor. In the studio here joining me is Hillel, APG community member extraordinaire, a pilot, and will tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a native from Baltimore, and I fly for myself, and occasionally I fly for work, which is not to get paid, but to commute. And I'm here because you're here.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad it worked out, and thank you very much. He's also provided beverages from a local brewery.
Where's mine?
Well,
In the fridge.
You have to, yeah.
In the fridge.
We'll
I
wait
think they
for
brought beers for us. We just
I'll go and look.
we just didn't get the memo we were supposed to be in Baltimore this afternoon.
not your fridge, the fridge in the studio here in
the
Baltimore.
APG fridge.
Yes.
We need to sort that out.
Yeah. Well, we'll fix it in post.
We can fix all kinds of things in post,
It's
can't we?
amazing what we can do
Apparently.
after the fact. So I'm so excited that Hillel was able to join us today, and we're actually going to have a nice little meetup after the show recording today. Was that coming from my computer? I think it was. I do apologize. Did you all hear that sound? You probably didn't.
Nope.
What,
Okay.
when I knocked my microphone?
No, it's like a
okay.
notification sound, like when I get mail.
Could have been mine.
I don't know.
No, we didn't
not
hear it.
mail.
It didn't come through to us. Don't worry.
Okay, well then, never mind. Anyway, so looking forward to the meetup. Hopefully, we'll. Are we going to have some others in the area join us?
At least one other person that I know of is
Okay.
definitely joining us, another pilot.
Mhm.
And
The guy was
well-
on Slack, right?
I don't know that he's on. No, someone else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there was somebody else that was interested in doing a meetup on Slack. I'm hoping that He knows that we're, well, you've announced it.
I put it on Slack.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So whoever is showing up, hello.
Oh, that we heard.
Oh.
Someone's phone is ringing now.
Yeah.
So that notification sound works. Okay. Very good.
Go. There's a little chap in India can fix it all in post for you.
Really? How much does he charge?
About 20 rupees a minute.
That's not much, is it?
Not
I
really.
think so.
Okay. Good. Well, maybe we'll look into that. How has everybody been doing since the last episode, the last show?
Oh, I've been doing all right. We had a little bit of snow here over the weekend, but other than that, nothing really much to talk about.
Wait.
I don't think-
Weren't you supposed to get like 2 or 3 feet of snow and the whole city was just going to be paralyzed and all that?
Well, at my house, we got about an inch of slush and the whole city was paralyzed for about 2 days. But
Well,
north
there
of
you
the
go.
city, they did get more, but it was still not. I mean, by the standards of Baltimore or any other city north of, I don't know, Mason-Dixon line, probably not anything that would have even made the news, raised concerns. People would have just gone about their business.
Right.
So, but it's the South, and we don't have any logistics in place to take care of snow when it happens. So everything gets shut down.
I think you have like 4 or 5 trucks that
I think
can go out
I
there.
did read once that Charlotte has 8 snowplows.
Oh, really? No, I'm just joking. Seriously?
I'm serious.
Wait a minute. They were up there in like well, I guess it makes more sense for Asheville and some of the communities in the
Yeah.
mountains to
They
have
they
more.
do actually get snow. So
Yeah.
and it still shuts those places down.
I think
they should
Atlanta
be able
has
to-
more than 8.
I could be wrong. They may have procured more snowplows since then, but
Steph, I cannot believe that.
I should probably get my facts right.
But it's
Get
funny.
us
I
closer.
like it.
It's a good number.
Yeah.
But anyway, beyond that, nothing else going on. And actually, if you don't mind for a moment, Nick and I have something that we'd like to put together here for you for a few minutes. So we're going to take control of the show. I know it's your show, but just go
Wow.
ahead and sit back
Okay.
and turn it over to Nick for a few minutes.
(1988) Aviation News in 3, 2. Looking back, 1988 was an interesting year in aviation. Why do I say that? Well, let's look what happened. In January 1988, here in the USA, the government finally started to track on-time arrival and baggage handling performance of US-based airlines. That same month, a Boeing 747 set a new around-the-world speed record of 36 hours, 54 minutes. And in February of 1988, we saw the first flight of the 737-400. In April 1988, Aeromexico declared bankruptcy as a government airline and was grounded. And in October, after being privatized, resumed operations with a new corporate identity, although still marketed as Aeromexico. Later, in April, Pacific Southwest Airlines shut down operations as it was integrated into U.S. Air. Remember Aloha Airlines Flight 243? That was a 737-200 that suffered an explosive decompression in flight over the Hawaiian Islands. It lost the top part of almost a quarter of its fuselage. That was in April of 1988, as were the first flights of the 747-400 and the McDonnell Douglas T-45 Goshawk. British Airways was in the news in April 1988, too, when they first started flying the Airbus A320. In May 1988, American Airlines took delivery of their first Airbus A300s, and Shamu-1, the first Southwest Airlines Boeing 737, painted like a killer whale, took its first flight. You remember Captain Nick's plane tale about Taka Flight 110? That was a 737 that hit some heavy rain, hail, and turbulence, lost power, and made a dead stick landing on a wide grass levee in Louisiana. Yep, May 1988. And now defunct British Midland Airlines started service with the British Aerospace ATP in May 1988 too. In June 1988, the first crash of an Airbus A320 occurred. That was Air France Flight 296, carrying 130 passengers and a crew of 6. They were making a low-altitude, low-speed flyby with landing gear down as part of an air show in France. But they hit some trees beyond the runway and went down, killing 3 on board and injuring 50. July 1988 brought us a story about 11-year-old Chris Marshall flying a Mooney M20 from San Diego, California to Paris. And in August, Carl Icahn took TWA away from stockholders and made it a privately owned airline. Speaking of big airline deals, in October 1988, Donald Trump made arrangements to purchase the Eastern Airlines shuttle. So 1988 was the beginning of the end for two great legacy carriers. In November 1988, after 5 years of secret operations and public speculation, the United States Air Force publicly unveiled the Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. A couple of interesting things happened in December 1988. Flying Tiger Line was sold to Federal Express, although the full merger wasn't completed until August the next year. And arguably, perhaps the most historic aviation-related event of 1988 took place in December, when Pan American World Airways Flight 103, flying from London to New York, exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing all 259 on board and 11 on the ground. All that and more took place 30 years ago. It seems 1988 was a big year in aviation history, and those are only the highlights. In fact, I left out what to me, perhaps to you, is the most personal historic aviation event of 1988. One that I'm celebrating and hope to celebrate with all of you too. You see, 1988 was truly the founding of the Airline Pilot Guy podcast. Back on December 15, 1988, our good friend Jeff Nielsen started his career with Acme Airlines. Congratulations on 30 years, Jeff. And maybe, and yeah, I know I'm throwing this to you blind, but maybe you can tell us a bit of how you got to Acme and some of the changes you've seen over the past 30 years. Well done, Captain Jeff. Thanks so much for doing what you do, for being who you are. And on a more personal level, thanks for being my friend. For the Airline Pilot Guy podcast here in Portland, Maine, this is your main man, Micah.
G'day, Jeff. MBF, just thought I'd send you a little message to congratulate you on 30 years at Acme. 30 years. That's a long time to be flying dinosaurs, mate. Anyway, 30 years ago was the Seoul Olympics, as well as Calgary, from memory. The Ben Johnson affair, although I'm sure that you're probably up in the sky with your Wayfarers on and being busy being a first officer. All the best, mate, and congratulations. 30 years in any career is a massive achievement. And to be able to do it in something that you're absolutely passionate about is a blessing. From everyone down here in my family to you and yours, once again, all the best, buddy. MBF, out.
G'day, Captain Jeff. It's Glenn here from Down Under. 30 years of flying for Acme. Fantastic. Congratulations. Yeah, I just wanted to say that. Thanks for starting such a great providing such a great community that we have now, members all over the world. And we're looking forward to seeing as many people as possible at Oshkosh next year. Oh, that's about it, really. Glenn out.
Hello, APG crew and community. It's Jen Niffer here. And I wanted to leave a little feedback because I've been thinking a lot lately about the year 1988. I would have been in college that year. Dr. Steph would have been 2 or maybe 3. Other things that happened that year, the top grossing movie was Rain Man. Faith by George Michael was at the top of the Billboard charts. NASA returned to space for the first time after the Challenger disaster. The Winter Olympics were held in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. The first major computer virus hit the internet. And that was the year we elected George H.W. Bush as president. But probably the most important event of 1988 happened in December of that year when an airline that we like to call Acme hired a pilot named Jeffrey Nielsen. Wow, 30 years at Acme. Congratulations, Captain Jeff. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experiences with us via the APG podcast. I hope you get to do something special to celebrate, like fly to O'Hare or Newark, or maybe just stay at APG headquarters and have a beer or two. Congrats again, Captain Jeff. And as always, thank you so much for an amazing podcast. Talons, Douglas. Bye.
Hello, Jeff. It's Captain Al here. A little bird tells me that you're celebrating your 30th anniversary at an airline very similar to Acme. Well, congratulations. And it seems only fitting that I should do something to mark the occasion. So on your 30th anniversary flight, I've arranged for those elderly, dumpy flight attendants to be replaced by some of my 20-year-old Romanian flight attendants. Now, Jeff, don't worry. I know that you don't handle foreign languages very well, but rest assured, these girls can speak perfect English, and they've assured me that they will be able to learn American by the time they reach you. Now, to make sure that you feel at home, I've arranged for some of them to have the little plastic booby-doos that you like in America. Have a great trip. Well done for 30 years, and here's to the next 30 years. Captain Al out.
Jeff Old Horse, it's Pip here, wishing you many congratulations on 3 decades at Acme Airlines. What an achievement. 3 decades and 3 aircraft types. The 727, the TriStar, and of course, the illustrious Mad Dog. It's a career that us young bucks can only hope to emulate one day. Of course, there's still a bit of life left in you yet, I bet. Maybe even another type rating. Something that would bring you internationally across to our friendly skies. Perhaps it would certainly be an honor to see you over here. But until then, wishing you all the very best and, of course, safe flying. Take care.
So we have a very special message to send out to a certain very important podcaster, as it is someone's anniversary at a certain airline. And Jeff, congratulations, because a little birdie tells me that you have been with Acme for 30 long years. Nev, I mean, how long has the Mad Dog been around?
Yeah, I mean, they're retiring the aircraft at an incredible rate of knots, aren't they? But here's an interesting fact for you. Did you know that in the United Kingdom, you actually get less time for murder?
Indeed. I'm going to make him feel really old now, Jeff, to literally the nicest man in the entire world. I think we can say that, can't we? He's literally the nicest man in the entire world. Yeah. Yes. To make you feel really old here, obviously, when you first started flying said Mad Dogs or generally flying for Acme, I would have been 11 years old, Jeff. Just to put that in perspective for you, I'm 42 now. So just to put that in perspective. But no, as I say, congratulations. And,
hey, Matt,
yeah,
Matt.
What?
You never guess what aircraft Captain Jeff could go on to fly for Acme.
Something equally as ancient and
No. Your favourite aircraft.
Oh, what, a 757? Please be kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, please don't do that, Jeff. Please, just no. Retire or something. Don't do it.
No, hopefully Jeff has got many, many more good years of flying to go for Acme. And you never know, perhaps one day us three might get a chance to hop on board said aircraft with Jeff as our captain.
Oh, what an honour that would be, hey, gents?
Yes, it certainly would be. And thank you very much indeed, Jeff, for the hours and hours and hours of content that you and the crew churn out every week on APG. It is superb.
Is that just for one show?
Anyway, should we stop being rude to the guest of honour?
Yes, all the very best, Jeff, and congratulations on your awesome length of service with Acme.
Greetings, Captain Jeff. Hillel here. Congratulations on the anniversary of your illustrious 30-year career with Acme Airlines, an airline nobody flies. Maybe if you keep at it, you might get hired by a real airline like Delta, perhaps. All this pretending you do might actually work out for something useful. But don't worry, your secret is safe with us. When you apply, feel free to use us as a reference. We won't let on that you've been faking this airline pilot guy thing for so long. You're just lucky you're such a lovable guy and have created such an incredible community. We'll keep up with this ruse for as long as you need. Maybe by then the FAA will see the light and raise the required retirement age to something where you can get a real career out of it. Until then, we'll just keep playing along and you can fly all the MD-88s and 90s you want, and we'll just go along with the L-1011 that you flew and the 727 and whatever else they might have flown back and then and whatever else Acme might throw at you in the future. We know that you've been getting a kick out of doing what you've been doing for so long. We don't want to spoil that for you. We know better than to wish you another 30 years at this because we've been believing that the FAA is going to kick you out sooner or later. So for however long you want to keep at it, we'll keep it lookout for you, and we're behind you all the way. Congratulations. Blue skies, tailwinds, and be clear and unlimited.
Hey, Captain Jeff, Fred here, and I just heard 30 years at Acme Airline. Wow. Even for a fictional airline, that's impressive. But all kidding aside, sir, congrats. Congrats on the show, congrats on the community, and congrats on a great career. Now, if it takes 30 years for somebody to grow a top 10 pilot mustache, that does not leave a lot of hope for the rest of us out there. Sir, I'm proud to call you a friend, and I wish you as many more years of happy flying as you want.
Captain Jeff, congratulations on 30 years of service with Acme Airlines. Having been your dispatcher before, ridden on your jump seat, and even flown with you in my personal airplane, you are a captain's captain. You are a complete, utter professional, and it is always a pleasure to work with you and fly with you and all that. So congratulations on 30 years of service with Acme. Congratulations to only having 5 more to go. Us junior people have a lot more than that. In fact, I think I have more time to retirement than you have years of service with the company. So anyway, Jeff, congratulations again.
Hi, Jeff. It's Liz here. Congratulations on your 30th anniversary with Acme. What an amazing milestone. I'm sure when you look back on your first day, you think to yourself, wow, that's a long time ago. But probably part of you also thinks, wow, that doesn't seem like all that long ago. I have those thoughts when I look back on things. I also think of the thousands of passengers you've safely delivered to their destinations. Quite amazing, really. The last thing I think about are all the first officers who've had the opportunity to share the cockpit with you. I know you're not an official training captain, but I'm sure you were able to impart a lot of good information to all of those people. And also, most importantly, how to be a professional pilot. I know professionalism is incredibly important to you. Well, here's to a few more good years flying with Acme, and many congratulations, Jeff. Cheers for now.
Hey, Captain Jeff. Captain Dana here. I want to take a few minutes to congratulate you on a monumental achievement of being with Acme Airlines, our company, for 30 years now. Congratulations. Unbelievable. All the torment and torture you've put us all through and made us deal with all your insecurities and your inabilities to do anything correctly. Well, you know what? I know that we'll be very thankful when you're gone, leaving us behind in your legacy. Oh, come on. I'm really only kidding. Anyways, you are an unbelievable pilot, an unbelievable mentor, an unbelievable person, and certainly the founder of this great community called the APG. Truly an honor to be a part of it. Really enjoy the banter, enjoy the people that are involved in our lives, and guess what? It's all because of you. You have done an unbelievable thing creating this community. You represent our company extremely well. When you're out there flying the line, making your PAs, interacting with passengers. You're just an all-around great person. So from the bottom of my heart, and I did say heart, I really want to say congratulations on an unbelievable career so far, and I look forward to seeing it continue, being a part of this community, and you're a real, true gentleman. So enjoy it. Congratulations, and back to you, the rest of the community.
Hi, Captain Jeff. Dr. Steph here.
Just wanted to add a few brief words of congratulations for your 30-year anniversary at Acme. I'm recording this while sitting here in my office in view of the 5 years of service certificate I received from my company this year. I don't know the stats for pilots these days, but the statistics for physicians in America are pretty dismal and show that the majority won't stay at their very first job for even 5 years, let alone 30. I'm sure it takes a number of factors to contribute to such a long tenure, and chief among those is the quality of the company you work for. But no less important are the personal qualities of dedication, loyalty, and passion for your chosen profession that we have all come to know so well. So congratulations on 30 years as a professional airline pilot at Acme, and at least 5 more yet to come. I look forward to raising a toast to this momentous achievement during the show this week. Cheers.
Hey, Jeff, 30 years. 30 years is a long time. Momentous occasion. It's Miami Rick live from a very blustery, cold, and snowy Anchorage, Alaska, in from Hong Kong yesterday, where the temperature was nice, the winds were light, and the food was good. Back to Hong Kong tomorrow, so looking forward to that. But before I left, I wanted to congratulate you and on marking your 30-year anniversary and wish you the best. Blue skies, happy landings, and hopefully a Boeing before you hang them up. Take care and all the best.
30 years with one outfit, particularly a dodgy one like Acme, is an outstanding achievement, Jeff. But I think you'll agree, after those wonderful messages of congratulations and that outpouring of love, that your greatest achievement by far has been the creation of your Airline Pilot Guy community. Through your marvelous podcast, you've brought people together, which is a wonderful accomplishment and will, I'm sure, be a lasting legacy. On behalf of all your APG listeners, we thank you and all wish you well for the rest of your flying career.
So what did you have in mind for our show today, Jeff?
Well, this is not in my show notes at
Oh,
all.
you didn't get the updated copy?
No.
Oh,
And
I'm going to blame the producer for that one.
I was telling Hillel, if I had known that you were up to doing something like this, I would have said, no, we're not going to do that. Thank you very much for all of you for all the wonderful things said, which were mostly untrue. But, you know, just like my virtual airline, my virtual career has been awesome.
No, well,
Excellent.
seriously, congratulations. You deserve all of those kind words. And cheers.
Well, thanks. Here we go. Cheers. Thank you, everyone.
And cheers. And many cheers I see in the chat room. Well done, Jeff.
Sweet. Now, I'm not sure how we fixed this in post, but there was a wonderful slideshow that apparently only those of us on the crew got a chance to see. And so I'm sure we'll be able to figure out a way for people to view. I guess, Nick, you put all that together? All those
it was a manual slideshow. I was dropping them into eyeglasses as we went along. So,
well, I don't know why it was that, you know, when you were presenting that, well, not you presenting, but presenting those pictures, why nobody else could see them in the chat.
I have no idea either. No idea. I don't know if we can fix it in post, but
yeah.
There you go.
Hey, NevTech.
This is being
help.
You, right?
Help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but no, it's not, because what you're seeing there, because the only reason why I knew that is because Hillel's looking at what we're broadcasting, and I'm thinking, why is it we only see Nick's, you know, photo there? So, oh well.
Apparently, I'm not on camera.
I see you.
Yeah, you're on camera.
Okay.
It's just that when you shared your screen, was there anything there that said like show or like present to everyone?
No.
Nope. Look, when Nick talks, all we see is his picture.
Oh, yeah, you're still not.
Well, my video is going through in my thumbnail, so I think it might be a glitch in.
It's a glitch.
Yeah.
Because we never have technical issues.
No, we never have glitches on the APG.
That's why
Anyway,
you drink beer.
You know, so there are a couple. Actually, it was one photo in there that was played a couple of times. That's
Our
probably
favorite one.
good. You didn't see.
That one could be the cover for the you know, like the artwork cover for the The entire episode.
Yeah, and then
not.
you'll never see the podcast on iTunes.
I told Jeff that he
again.
should just claim Photoshop, and that was his alibi.
And and I was telling Hillel, there's a story behind that. I don't know. Did you know the story?
I don't. There may be. Go ahead.
There was we had a technical issue and a delayed flight, and we finally got the flight performed, but apparently not every. I'd say 99.9% of the passengers were happy. I know it doesn't work out exactly right, the math, but most of the passengers were very happy with us fixing the airplane and finally getting them to their destination. But there was one passenger that was not quite so impressed with our performance that day. I guess especially mine, because as he was walking off the airplane, and I'm saying goodbye to everybody, he was holding up a single finger.
Oh, you're joking, really?
No, I'm not joking.
I remember the story.
And it was like, and I just started laughing because I didn't know I didn't know how to react to it. And as he walked, as he was walking out the door, I said, "Well, thank you." Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes,
But
it was one landing.
He had a very, very stern looking face and just holding up, and he didn't say it. He didn't utter a word. He didn't really need to. It was all nonverbal communication with, "I'm number one." Basically, is what
He was telling you you're number one.
Yeah, that was it. Maybe it was a compliment.
He might have just had Tourette's or something with his fingers.
Yeah, it could be. But I've never, ever experienced that in my life. And I've been doing this, as you just heard, for 30 years, day after tomorrow. By the time you're listening to this podcast, I've passed over that 30-year threshold with Acme Airlines. So, and thank you so much, everyone, for all the kind words. And it's been an awesome career so far, and hopefully it will continue to be the next 5 years. And I'm truly blessed that I got hired by, I think, one of the best airlines in the world. And so my professional career has been so great, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to do the show, because I felt like I should give back because it's been so good to me. I didn't think I would start breaking up, but I guess I'm going to. Anyway, so Hillel now is going to say something.
No, I was just going to say that we have an actual show, I think.
Oh, yeah. We should do a show.
Maybe a show.
In honor of my 30th anniversary in a couple of days.
Good idea. Absolutely. Get some beard on your neck, sir.
Ah, yeah. That was just a little frog or something.
Yeah.
Cold. I'm
Little
still trying to
scratch.
get over.
Yeah,
Yeah. Scratchy throat. At least it's not as bad as 200, right?
Absolutely.
We haven't reached that point yet.
You really lost it there.
You'll remember this day in Baltimore forever.
Yes, I will. Awesome. Thank you, whoever came up with the idea to do that. Awesome. Thank you. That was very touching. And now, well, basically, we don't have any more time to do this show. So thanks for joining us this week. Here, let me play the... No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, we are really done. Okay, great. We need to go for a run.
No, we're not. Yeah, great. I get to do something important in my life instead of doing this stupid thing. Anyway, yeah, thank you, all of you. I do appreciate it. Okay. Nick, what have you been up to?
Not a lot, sir.
You've been to the Caribbean, right?
Been to the Caribbean and back, and spent the last day knocking together some audio. But
that was your doing, huh? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, no, I just pieced it together. I didn't do all the organizing. I'll have to thank someone else for that. I don't know who. I don't know whether it's Liz or Steph or Dana got that organized. I suspect Liz. I don't know.
It was not me. I don't know who
Liz
arranged it.
You're a peach.
I can take no credit, but credit to wherever it's due. Someone let us know whose idea it
I
was.
have a feeling I know who it was. Yeah. You did some kind of a sign language there thing, and I think you just did Liz. Yeah.
I thought he was giving the wind up. You've been talking too long now.
All right, so the letters are L-I-Z. There you go.
Okay. Thank you. I need all the help I can get. Okay. Let's see. Dana is not with us. I was going to say, hey, Dana, what have you been up to? But right now, we can tell you that Dana is up to flying a jet from Detroit to, I'm not going to say what he called Detroit, his special little name, just in case anybody listening out there is from Detroit. And he's flying that airplane to Bradley. And unfortunately, timing didn't work out very well for Dana to be with us today.
Or perfectly, depending on who you asked.
Yeah. Yeah,
I will say he was really disappointed that he wasn't going to get to sit here to watch your reaction to
and-
all of that. He really did want to be here for that. So
I
we
can
miss
see
you,
why
Dana.
now.
Sorry you couldn't be here for this part of the show.
I just thought it was going to be a regular show. So, I thought, well, no big deal, Dana. I mean, you've missed shows before, whatever. But anyway, yes, I have mentioned my career prior to Acme, Mark Normington. But I'm not sure I've done it on the Airline Pilot Guy show. Maybe when I started podcasting, I did a Catholic pilot, and I may have talked about my life before Acme Airlines. But essentially, I'm not going to talk about it because I want to do a special show with everybody, all the APG crew, talking about our how we got here. Very much like Steve Horn does for us when he flies with first officers that have really interesting stories and backgrounds. And then Pilot Pip and Captain Al did a very special, looks like it's going to be at least a 3-parter, how they ended up getting involved in aviation and how they got where they are. And it's really fascinating to listen to. And I thought to myself, as I was listening to that we should do that. So Nick and Steph and Dana and I can talk about our backgrounds and how we got to where we are. So look forward to doing that in the future. So I won't mention, anyway, I was in the Air Force for a little over 7 years and then got hired by Acme about 30 years ago. So a lot more to it, a lot more detail, but that's the, in a nutshell, what happened with me. And right now I'm on a 4-day trip. It's day 3 of the 4-day trip, and I'm looking forward to our meetup here in Baltimore after we finish recording the show today. And let me quickly look at the show notes. I don't think I put anything in there for me to talk about. No, I haven't. So that is pretty much it. I picked up a trip next week, another 4-day trip, and that'll be my last trip of 2018, most likely. And I haven't updated my schedule yet on the website, but I'll do that soon, hopefully. I don't remember exactly where I'm going, but that's it for me. Anything else we should do before we get on with the coffee fund?
Nah, let's go for it.
Okay, good. Here we go.
In post?
Yes. Yeah, if you're watching the video, you're just going to have to listen to the audio show, especially if you're one of those who are contributing to the coffee fund, one of our new contributors. But I decided that I can do that later. So now we're hearing the sound of the new. I'll just play it. Here we go.
Stand by for news.
All right, let's start with the first item in the news folder, and that is a story that was sent to us by several people, actually, but Steve is one that we used this link. So, in fact, this happened, I believe, when we were. I should not be drinking beer.
I'll help you out there, Jeff. It happened while we were. I didn't even. I haven't even been drinking yet.
Well, the last recording
happened while we were recording the last episode.
Yes.
So we did not address it during that podcast because we wanted to get some more information about it, even though there were some chat room requests to talk about it. So here you go. Well, should I just read the article?
I think maybe you should, or summarize it.
Oh, you could just make it up as you go along.
Yeah, we'll summarize. So basically what happened last week, a Southwest Airlines plane slid off the runway in Burbank during landing. Oh my gosh, the headline here is great. Plane careens off runway as deluge creates issues across LA County. So there you go. Not sensational at all. A Southwest Airlines plane rolled off the end of a runway at the Hollywood Burbank Airport during a heavy rain while landing Thursday morning, according to the FAA. The flight originated in Oakland, was landing in Burbank shortly after 9 a.m., slid off the runway, came to a stop after hitting a barrier designed to catch airplanes, commonly referred to as EMAS. No reported injuries, 112 passengers, 5 crew members. But I like the quote from the passenger here. Gary Scott said, "We didn't realize what was going on. It was that fast. It got very bumpy, and I felt the front of the aircraft sink in a little bit. And then it was like, okay, we're done." So pretty anticlimactic. He said he knew the plane had skidded off the runway when he saw mud splashing against the windows and the headlights from cars on the road beyond the airport wall. Passenger said the pilot warned him when the well, I can't talk either today. I'm just going to start that one over again. Fix it in post.
Better than I was doing those.
I don't know. Passengers said that the pilot warned them that the landing would be rough when they first boarded. We were primed for something to happen. Was the weather also bad in Oakland?
Had you decided it was going to be a bad landing before he even got airborne?
Yeah, apparently so.
Wow.
Watch out, folks. When we get to Burbank, it's not going to be very good.
Yeah. As you're getting on the
Want you to know
airplane, hey, folks, you better make sure your seatbelt's fastened.
This ain't gonna be pretty.
Yeah, it's gonna be an awful.
Oh dear.
I hope that this is not true.
I hope not either. Who knows? But anyway, the EMAS did its job. For folks who don't know, and I actually don't have the information here, so I'm just going to say what I kind of remember. But there was an incident back in 2000. Is that right? Maybe Hillel.
Yep, that's it.
On the same runway with the Southwest Airlines 737 that went off the end of the runway, but went much further because at that point in time, they did not have the engineered materials arrestor system, the EMAS, in place at the end of the runway. Thanks. Ding.
Yeah, wait, where's my bell? There we go. Yeah. Extra points.
Thank you. And I think we talked about this a little bit the last time, but that flight touched down almost halfway down the runway and significantly beyond the end of the runway, which is only, what did I say on the last show? 5,608 feet or something.
Something like that. It's less than 6,000 feet long.
Not a very long runway, but they ended up basically next to a gas station next to the road beyond the end of the runway. So,
fill her up.
Yep.
Exactly.
We'll take some Jet A.
Was this the one where the captain said, "Well, that's the end of my career"?
I think that was, or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Or it was like, looks like I picked the wrong week to quit. Wasn't there one where they said something, a quote from Airplane after something happened? I don't know if it was that incident or not. Yeah, we're being a little silly here, but yeah, like I said, good news is no injuries. EMAS did what it was designed to do.
EMAS. So what the heck is EMAS? Anybody want to tackle that one? You kind of you mentioned it. Yeah. Go ahead, Nick.
It's soft stuff that the wheels will break through the surface, but then it'll just provide a great deal of friction to retard the aircraft, hopefully without breaking the gear off. So it's a high strength plastic mesh anchored to the pavement, and then they pour silica into lanes bounded by the mesh, and then cover that with a thin layer of poured cement, which is treated by a sealant. So the aircraft weight breaks through the cement, and then it goes into the soft stuff below, which drags it to a halt like a car driving through thick sand.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept, and I'll include in the show notes a link to the Wikipedia article regarding the Engineered Materials Arrestor System, or EMAS, and how it all came about, and how much money they calculate it has saved since they introduced the systems for many airports across the country. And I'm glad they had that installed at that runway 8 at Burbank. I noticed airports like, I'm sure Midway probably has.
Midway has it on the ends of all 4 main runways.
Okay. LaGuardia has them installed on most of the runways there. It's in fact, you may remember we talked about it on the show during the 2016 campaign for president, vice president. The vice presidential candidate, Mike Pence, who became the vice president, was aboard a 737, a chartered flight by Eastern Airlines, the charter company, and they ended up touching down long and going into the EMAS system, and that I think prevented a lot of injuries / deaths. It's a good system.
Yeah,
It's expensive,
absolutely.
but it's worth it.
Exactly.
So, and what's funny is they said many of these events, they've realized that the pilots, as they're approaching the end of the runway and that EMAS system, they try to get off the
Oh yeah, they veer
sort of-
away from it instead of just going into it.
Yeah, and
Like, don't do that.
I kind of understand that. It's like, you're looking at what's coming up at you and you're thinking, well, I need to get off the end of the runway, not because you want to purposely avoid the EMAS, but it's just like it doesn't look like that's going to be enough room for you to stop. So
Yeah, it just looks like it's your brain telling you don't do that. That's not a good idea, because oftentimes it is at the end of the EMAS is the thing that you don't want to run into, like the wall or an intersection, gas station, water. There's a reason it's there.
most
And it's
runways have a stopway, an area where you can decelerate and not go off the end of a cliff or something like that. Greenville downtown has an
Except
EMAS.
the one incident, actually, Mark just mentioned it in the chat room too. The incident they had with the business jet a few months ago, it was on the other end of the runway from where the EMAS is, but on the side where the EMAS is, there's an interstate.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like a high-tech version of the runaway truck ramps, if anyone's familiar with those. Y'all ever seen a truck stuck in a runaway truck ramp?
I have not, but I've seen those like on mountain.
Yeah, on mountain highways, especially here in the US, they're pretty common. They're basically just filled with gravel or sand. And, if a truck's brakes fail, they can drive into that essentially, so they don't keep careening down the mountain pass.
Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they lose their brakes, which I guess must not be uncommon for some
I've
of those
seen
big
at least
rigs.
2 or 3 trucks in runaway truck ramps in the
Ooh.
past over the
Not
years.
good.
But I've lived in some mountainous places too.
Right.
So it happens.
Right. All right. Thank you, Steve, and others for sending us links to that story. And I don't know exactly, as it mentioned in the article, heavy rain. Southern California was getting a huge deluge of rain and flooding and everything else. And it was not a long runway. And I don't know, what other factors were involved there. But I'm kind of surprised because the 737 performs pretty well stopping. So, but
Mhm.
anyway.
Well, like you said, we don't have all those details
No.
yet, and maybe we'll get them, maybe we won't. But either way, good outcome for all the people on board.
Nobody hurt. Now, we can't say the same thing about this other story. Item B, the U.S. Marines declare 5 service members dead, ending search after the air refueling incident off the Japanese coastline. 5 and they were on board the KC-130 refueling airplane. And just to summarize, basically what they have determined, the F-18 coming in, rendezvousing with the KC-130 for refueling. It was at night. He was using, the pilot was using night vision goggles, and appears that he came in at a too high of a rate of just too fast, and ended up colliding with the KC-130, and both airplanes were destroyed. The good thing for the F-18 crew was that they had ejection seats. The KC-130 pilots and crew did not, and they assumed that the airplane crashed and all perished. And actually, the pilot flying the F-18 safely ejected. I say safely. He ejected, but did not survive his injuries, and so they lost 6 out of 7 people in the whole incident, which is pretty sad. Yeah. Apparently, Captain Jamar Reslard was a 28-year-old F-18 pilot with the Marine All-Weather Fighter Attack Squadron 242, and they have a lot of great things to say about him. Apparently, he was quite a great guy, and he's going to be missed.
Tragic stuff.
Yeah. Nick, when you did aerial refueling, did you ever do any of the night stuff with like night vision goggles, or was that?
No, we always used the tanker's lights and the radar to assess what was going on. And it was like any interceptors. You get close, you have to keep a very close eye on your V sub C. The relative speeds, your V sub C, the relative speeds, that is. So that's the rate of closure. So the radar will give you an indication of your rate of closure. You'll know the target speed, and certainly in a tanker, he will usually tell you his speed, and you have to like scan the radar, scan your own indicator speed, and you make sure you bring it down incrementally so that when you're within a few 100 meters, few 100 yards, you've really got it down to a manageable speed. Otherwise, you have to break away and restart your approach. That's kind of a bit of a golden rule. And the other thing is, you always close in on an aircraft you're going to formate on with an escape path. So you're never at the same altitude, or you're never on the same lateral course, so that if you misjudge it, you'll escape safely either to one side or underneath. And usually, if you're being very careful, you have both those avenues available to you. I don't know whether the 130 was maneuvering at the time, which makes it a little trickier. And if the guy was, of course, using night vision goggles, then they have all their own problems. I'm not an expert on NVG work, so I couldn't talk a lot about that, but I know that you don't get very good binocular vision out of them. So sometimes it's hard to judge, and you can be full judging distances. So I'm not going to criticize this chap. It's a highly technical and highly complex thing, trying to fly a fighter at night and join on a tanker and then tank. So there may be lots of factors which will come out in an investigation, but just a very sad thing. No one goes into this job intending to make an error that will result in anyone's death. So I think we just have to take our hats off to them all and say they were very brave men.
Yes. Very sad. And we do appreciate everything they did in their service for defending our country.
Absolutely.
All right. Item C, a Cav OK. I guess that's the name of the airline.
Clever.
Cav OK. By the way, recently here in the United States, one of our former presidents died. President George H.W. Bush. And I don't know if you're excuse me, watching any of the coverage of it, but they were talking about the fact that the senior George Bush, the 41st president of the United States, was a military pilot, and flew several sorties in the Navy in World War II. And he, let's see, what the point of that, Cav OK, I believe that the key word, or the special secret word that they had to project when, because he was quite old. I think he died, it was like 94 or something like that. He was in his 90s. And I guess they had been planning for this for some time and knew that, you can't live forever. And they had come up with this, the secret code word to use, that when President George Bush Sr. passed away, they would use the word Cav OK. And I thought that was pretty cool, very aviation related. And so when his son, George W. Bush, got the word from Secret Service that, Cav OK, they knew that HW had passed away. I thought that was pretty cool.
That is, it's lovely to have an aviation-related term, so long as no one thought they were actually talking about the weather at the time.
Right.
It turns out that he was a naval aviator shot down in World War II and dramatically rescued by a submarine, which that sounds quite an event.
Yeah, he did amazing service for our country in the military, and then on in the political world after that. Anyway, getting back to this one, Cavalcade Antonov 74. Thank you. How did you know that was what I was?
Because you stopped.
Yeah. At all right. Where?
Sao Tome.
Ah, okay. Sao Tome. Really? Where is that?
I'm assuming
Brazil?
it's in Brazil.
Oh, okay. On the 29th of July, 2017. We're now just hearing about it here. Huh?
Sorry, it's Sao Tome and Principe. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Never heard of it before?
I go there all the time. They were going from that place to Accra in Ghana, which is, I know, it's in Africa, with 6 crew.
Yeah, Sao Tome and Principe is in Africa also, just FYI. Just
Oh, is
helping
it?
our accuracy rating there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Hillel. You're supposed to be
Sorry,
helping
I totally
us.
said Brazil. I totally said Brazil.
Oh, it was
wow,
Steph
totally
that
said
said
Brazil
Brazil?
too. It was me.
Okay.
My fault.
The second
No,
thing
I'm
was
just
wrong,
correcting
too.
my own mistakes here.
Yeah, it's the big place that looks a little like South America, but it doesn't have such a pointy bottom.
Okay. Anyway, this happened on July 29th, 2017, so quite some time ago. But apparently the final report just was released by the appropriate regulatory agency, Nigeria, Accident Investigation Board. They released their final report, and apparently they were accelerating for takeoff on Sao Tome's runway 29 when the left-hand engine, D36, I guess that's the type of engine, ingested a number of birds, prompting the crew to reject the takeoff. The aircraft overran the end of the runway and went down a slope before coming to a stop on soft ground. One crew member received injuries. The aircraft received substantial damage beyond repair. Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Infrastructure, Yuri Lavrenuk, reported the flight was attempting takeoff when, according to preliminary information, the right-hand engine received a bird strike. The takeoff was rejected. The aircraft went past the runway end. Okay, we know that. Apparently, the birds that were ingested were eagles. Those are big birds. And they, is that right? Or am I referring to another accident that we're going to talk about here? No, I think that's it. No, maybe it's this other one here, G. Anyway,
Don't read too much into it. It's a poorly written article.
yeah, it is.
I think it does say Eagles later on.
Okay, it is the one with the eagles. Yeah, we'll put the accident investigation final report in the show notes so you can read about it. But the thing that was interesting here to me was that he ended up stopping or rejecting the takeoff well past the V1 speed, and we all know that the only reason why you would reject beyond V1 is, excuse me, if you didn't think the airplane was going to fly. And where did that come from anyway? That
What?
sound?
You just got a notification.
Oh, did I? I thought I made my notifications silent, but apparently not.
It's vibrating.
Silent but deadly.
Yeah. Sorry. So and then the other thing that was interesting to me is the way that the whole thing works is that apparently the flight engineer actually activates the thrust reversers.
Yeah, what's
So
that
the
all about?
captain told. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense at
I
all.
mean, it
to me.
doesn't sound like a great system.
No.
Job.
And they didn't get the they didn't get the spoilers out for a while, did they?
No.
No.
For like 5 seconds or something like that, which is
Well, in fact, they said that the speed brake spoiler lever was in the down detent, which
they never
means
got
they
out.
wouldn't deploy automatically.
Okay.
So they I think they might have actually stopped had they done that. But if you notice the picture of this, it's a weird looking airplane, isn't it? It's high wing and the engines are like mounted right up against the fuselage, right at the sort of base of the the root of the wing. So there's not a lot of different distance between the intakes. And if you thought birds had gone down one intake, I think it's quite likely you would think to yourself, well, they could have gone down both, because there's only like 10 feet between the two intakes, just the width of the fuselage, basically.
Right.
So that's I'm not going to comment on his decision to reject. If he'd stopped before the end of the runway because they'd done the drill properly, I don't think we'd be talking about it, would we?
We would not, most likely. And I'm not even sure, perhaps, if he had continued to take off, perhaps, only one of the engines would have failed and they would have been able to return safely for a landing. Yeah, tough one, I guess.
Yeah, I think my brief says we'll only reject above V1 if there's unambiguous indications that the aircraft will not fly.
Right.
Because I personally think it's a lot safer to keep going. But there you go.
I believe, that's the same philosophy that we have. Item D, American pilots get MCAS training before expected software tweak. We've talked about this MCAS system on the last couple of shows, I guess.
At least.
Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, I believe is what it's called. And they said that American Airlines has updated some pilot training to include discussion about the automated system suspected of playing a role in the deadly 29th of October crash of Lion Air Boeing 737 MAX, according to the company's pilots union. The training updates come amid expectation that Boeing is working on a software change to address concerns with the 737 MAX's maneuvering characteristics or augmentation system. Boeing added MCAS to the 737 MAX because that aircraft has slightly different flight characteristics from the earlier generation 737 NG. And basically, it makes the 737 MAX behave like the 737 NG, new generation, by trimming the stabilizer so that the aircraft knows it drops if the aircraft approaches a stall with flaps up. Airlines say Boeing never informed them of the system, which is a problem. Anyway, so looks like now, they're trying to get the word out and get everybody trained so everybody understands what the system is, what it does, what could go wrong, and how to deal with the situation if it doesn't work as advertised. So basically, it's saying that you just treat this as a runaway stabilizer thing, and it doesn't work exactly the same as a generic runaway stabilizer kind of a situation. So the important thing is getting to those trim cutout switches, apparently, just to completely turn off the system. So anything else to say about that?
No.
Okay. Be nice to have a big master warning come up. I know you say that this trim wheel makes a lot of noise, but I've heard that some guys are still quite capable of ignoring it or missing it, because apparently on some aircraft it's not as noisy as others.
Yeah, apparently so. I mean, I'm only basing my knowledge of the trim wheel system on the 727, which shares a lot of the same controls and features of the 737. It's the same fuselage, the same cockpit arrangement, and I'm just assuming it's the same trim wheel system, but apparently it's not quite the same. So I really can't speak for it because I've never flown the 737. I don't have a type rating in that airplane.
So my first job out of college was working in product integrity for the Department of the Navy, and we were building aircraft. That's what I did. And in product integrity, a couple of the responsibilities of the whole department division, one was system safety and the other was reliability, maintainability, and you had to rotate to many of the different groups. And so I learned how they do the calculations for reliability, maintainability, and safety. And one of the things that we learned was they look at all the different failure modes and figure out, okay, mean time between failure, or how to create systems to deal with failures. And Boeing's taking a lot of heat right now for having not explained how this system works. And knowing how some of these calculations get done, now I don't condone or excuse the fact that they didn't expose everybody to exactly what all the systems were and how they worked, and I get that. But as far as the safety calculations or reliability calculations, they said, okay, the only way this could fail is if these other things were inoperable. And if any of these other things were inoperable, then the plane is inoperable. These are things that are required minimum equipment list, and they shouldn't be flying, period. And if I understand things correctly, they had inoperable angle of attack indicators, which they should have grounded the plane in the first place. So I can understand the logic behind saying, well, if the angle of attack indicators were inoperable, they shouldn't be flying the plane. Therefore, they'll never see this problem. But they flew the plane anyway, potentially. Is that what I think that's what's been coming out? So, I don't say that they shouldn't have told people about the system so that everybody understands what all those systems were. But in understanding how they do the math, they figured this was never going to happen because the plane should have been grounded.
Right.
So how does that protect you if they fail in the air? Because the MEL doesn't apply once you've got airborne, or even once you've started moving under your own power.
I think that's a great question. If they're in the air, if something was happening, then that's probably a use case that they didn't actually think through, or maybe there's I'm assuming there's more to it than what we know. So again, there's a lot of things that could have happened to prevent this situation, and if in fact it was just a matter of, well, they didn't think of everything because they didn't think of how to, exposing the pilots and crew and users to all those different failure modes. Would have certainly been useful to know. I'm sure a lot of people like to know. That's why Americans getting trained right now.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I'm sure that this won't be the end of us talking about this accident in MCAS.
Stay tuned.
Yes. Item E. A Norwegian 787 risked overrun after taxiing too far. Interesting way to headline this article. Let me tell you really what happened here. Pilots of a Norwegian Boeing 787-9 departing London Gatwick inadvertently taxied over 400 meters beyond the beginning of the runway, shortening the takeoff distance and risking an overrun in the event of engine failure. The aircraft bound for Buenos Aires had been given instructions to enter runway 26 right along taxiway AN, Alpha November. This taxiway is unusual because it feeds into the runway in a straight line rather than requiring a turn to line up with the runway heading. Runway 26 right also has a displaced threshold, and in the dark, the pilots taxied up to this threshold, some 417 meters past the beginning of the runway, before starting their takeoff run. This meant the aircraft had insufficient thrust to meet regulatory takeoff performance criteria for the length of runway available. The 787 rotated about 600 meters from their runway end. After departure, both pilots commented that there was not much runway remaining at liftoff, says the Air Accidents Investigation Branch. Given the limiting length of the runway, the load had been reduced to allow takeoff, and therefore the crew were not surprised by the length of the runway and are used during the takeoff run and were unaware of any problem. But had the aircraft suffered an engine failure at the critical V1 speed, an attempt to abort the takeoff could have resulted in an overrun, says the inquiry. Analysis by the carrier indicated that the aircraft was 12 tons too heavy for the available distance. So I included in, and you'll see it in the show notes as well, the airport diagram, 20-9 page from Jeppesen at the Gatwick Airport in London. And you can see that 26 right, the taxiway they were using basically is like an extension of the runway, but it's a taxiway at that point. And then you hit a certain point, which is the beginning of the runway itself. And then 417 meters later, then you actually cross the displaced threshold. And that's the point at which airplanes coming in to land on 26 right would land beyond that point. But for takeoff, and if you look at the diagram, you'll see that it's a dark color, a black, with a different type of marking on it. That indicates that that taxiway surface can be used for takeoff and should be used, and it's used in the calculations for performance takeoffs. So, Nick, you're somebody who occasionally, and especially recently, flies out of Gatwick. And is that a normal procedure to use 26 right for takeoff?
No, I've never used it, and although I only go to Gatwick occasionally, I have operated out of there numerous times over the last 25 years. So I do know the airport. I'm just not in there every day, um, and so it's a very rare occurrence. What they're trying to do at Gatwick is speed up their movement rate by trying to get 26 right used as a departure runway and 26 left used as the landing runway. They can't work simultaneously because the two are very close, but they can get aircraft lined up ready to go so that when the landing aircraft is down under control, they can release the takeoff area and they can certainly speed up the rate. But actually, if you go to Google Maps, it's a very clear picture of what the pilots would have seen. Now, the big clue is that you enter the end of the runway 26 right full length via Charlie. Now, if these guys entered via Papa or November, which is further down, not down the runway, further in the undershoot, as it were, in the approach part, then you're on a taxiway and you've got to taxi forward till it widens. And the only real indication that you're actually on the runway now are the white lines that indicate the edges of the runway. There's no real clear marking, because you taxi down that 400 odd meters and you then end up at the piano keys with the runway number written on it. And that's a very clear indication that that is the threshold, but that's a displaced threshold. So what you would need to do is look carefully at your charts. You'd work out that, oh, hang on a minute, that's the displaced threshold for landing, but there's 400 meters before that I can use. Let's look. Oh, it's beside taxiway Charlie that starts. So if I'm going to taxi down that taxiway leading onto the runway, say via Papa or November, which is a bit further up, I'm going to have to go down the thin bit of taxiway. And when I get a beam Charlie, it now turns into runway magically. You haven't really done anything. You've been going in the same direction. But because I'm a beam Charlie, I should be now on the runway. But it's not really clear. And I think that's why Gatwick are having to go ahead and improve the markings on that runway so that it's perfectly clear that this is the start of the takeoff run.
So I don't know when the photo on Google Maps was taken. I'm assuming it's the same as the one on my Apple Maps here that I'm looking at on my phone. But it's pretty clear. I mean, there's displaced threshold markings once you reach the runway end before you reach the actual threshold.
Well, all I've got is a white line. And
there's a white line and then there's white arrows, you know,
Yeah.
the forward arrows that you get. But to me, that means displaced threshold and it's part of the runway.
Yes, it does, but they're not exactly. I mean, they're not as clear as the piano keys, the visual indications at the beginning of the runway.
Right.
And what's more, if you're approaching it down that taxiway, you're also getting all these taxiway markings that are on the ground as well. Because don't forget that runway normally, in normal life, and certainly for many years, has been a taxiway and treated as a taxiway. So it's full of taxiway markings.
Yeah, that's true. You can see those. I'm a little surprised that they actually don't have a runway sign there too. You know, because when you enter
Yeah.
a runway, usually
There is a
sign.
vertical sign on the left side, but because of the angle of Google Maps,
No, you can't see it on
what
here, but
says.
I would. Yeah, actually, I think I can see it on there.
And of course, it's at night, so none of these.
That's the factor.
markings
It's going to be hard to see
stand out
those
as well.
beam markings at night.
So unless
all right,
that sign is well lit and it's obvious, saying this is the beginning of runway 26 right, then yeah, I can understand perhaps why they made the mistake. Because especially when they're looking down the runway in their lights, they can see the threshold a bit further down, because all those white piano keys are going to stand out well. They may have naturally just trundled down there. And the other factor is if they've come onto the runway, it's a bit hard for people to visualize this unless you've got the maps. Hopefully we can put a picture up in the show notes. But if you're taxiing down to the runway, you're already aligned with the runway when you're coming down the taxiway, and you're just trundling down the taxiway until you get to the actual end of the runway. And you've got your landing lights on, they're never nearly as clear as taxiway lights are for moving around on the ground, because the angle of the lights are usually projected much higher. So what is directly in front of the aircraft is not usually well illuminated. And that may be also what they did. I don't know. But they may have already selected all their landing lights on and just be trundling down and just miss the white line that indicated the start of the actual takeoff run.
So I noticed that they have the same kind of a displaced threshold on 26 left. Is I would imagine that's the normal takeoff in that direction? Takeoff runway?
Yeah, we invariably take off from Alpha 3 or Mike. Mike is the one near the very end of the runway, the correct end of the runway. But an Alpha 3 is the one where the piano keys are.
Okay.
So, but on that runway, if it doesn't matter which taxiway you go into, you're on the runway, I think. It's
Yeah.
because
There's no
there is
taxiway, before that.
exactly right.
Yeah.
But
So-
having said that, the that little bit that juts out of 26 left, that is only a couple of 100 meters, is indicated to be narrower than the normal width of a runway. So I don't know if you're actually allowed to use that for takeoff, or whether you have to trundle down that till you're at the bit of the takeoff run that's adjacent to Mike. So
I was instructed
don't
if
know.
it's a dark color, like it's all black, just like the runway itself, then that is allowed for use. That's what you can and should use for takeoff.
Interesting though, on 26 right, you reach darkly the runway.
Yeah, it's all the same color. I
Yeah.
think they've used the same surface material on all the
Oh, I'm
access
sorry.
taxiways.
I'm referring to the actual diagram, not the.
On the
I see.
diagram.
Yeah. I put it this way: I can understand why the crew might have made the error. It's not plain.
They need to fix the ergonomics of this whole thing. Right?
Yeah, and everything in aviation to stop mistakes should be as simple and as plain as possible, because whilst you're trying to interpret something and do everything else you need to on the flight deck, it is possible to make these kind of mistakes.
When you were, if you were doing all the performance calculations on your EFB or however you do it, would the performance data be based on 26 right via intersection Charlie, or how would that be designated? Would that be like a clue to this is where
Well, it would either say 26 right full, or it would name the taxiway. And if it is the full length, it often says full.
Okay.
So you don't get a taxiway to indicate. But what between you and me, Jeff, what I and a lot of my colleagues do is, because we might be given clearance to line up through any of those three taxiways, Romeo, Quebec, and Charlie, I personally do a performance calculation for the shortest one. So if I'm taxiing down and they change their minds and say, oh, line up via Romeo and take off, I've got safe performance for that. And if they give me the further away ones, we give me a longer takeoff run, Quebec or Charlie, then I've just got a bit of performance in hand. That way I don't have to halt and do a completely new performance calculation because they give me a slightly shorter takeoff run. So I always err on the safe side and take the shortest probable or possible taxiway lineup point they give me.
There, and you have a higher takeoff setting than you might need, but it's better safe than sorry, right?
Exactly right. And it's a lot quicker if they change the say the guy in the taxiway you were planning to line up on breaks, and if he's British Airways, that's quite common. What he really means is that he's waiting for his numbers, which means he hasn't had his calculations come through on his box yet. But he says, oh, we've got a technical problem. Then you'd have to sit behind him. But if you can take a shorter taxiway, then you can get away. So it's all about saving those few minutes that makes a difference.
Anything that's longer than what your performance data is based, it's all gravy.
Exactly.
You got it covered. Yeah.
Hey, so question in the chat room, and I think maybe we take stuff like this for granted, but we reference the piano keys. That might not mean a lot to people who are either new to listening to the show or
you've heard of somebody playing the piano.
There's a big piano there. You can't miss it. It's a damn
It makes
great
noise when
piano.
you,
And when
plays
you
it-
when you taxi over it, it goes ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling as you taxi over the keys. How silly are these people? Don't they know anything?
No. So it's if you look out the window when you're on your next flight, or if you've ever been on a flight, or if you pull up a satellite view of an airport, you'll notice on the very ends of the runways where you're either departing from or landing, there's all these white stripes painted at the very end with a number that indicates the runway. And depending on how many of those stripes there are, that's the width of the runway. So you know basically how wide the runway is when you're taking the runway. So
I have trouble counting them when I'm on short finals. That's the only problem.
Well,
Work out how
yeah.
wide the runway is.
Run out of fingers.
Yeah,
if you're landing on a runway, you think you need to. If there's too many for you to count, it's probably wide enough for your aircraft.
Oh, that's a good. That's
yeah,
a good
because
rule
I mean
of
there are like 12 on this one, so I have to take my shoes and socks off as well.
So if there's 4 stripes, it's a 60-foot wide runway. 6 is 75 feet. 8 is 100 feet. 16 is 200 feet. So if you can't count it, and you're flying a large aircraft, I'm going to say you're probably
okay.
You're going to be okay.
Too many to count.
Yes. We've talked about on the past couple of shows the incidents of Airbuses landing and collapsing nose wheels and damaging nose struts and that kind of thing. Well, not to be outdone, a Peruvian Boeing 737-5 or 500 at La Paz on the 22nd of November. Not really sure. It doesn't really say exactly why this happened, but they were landing and both main gear struts while landing on La Paz's airport El Alto, Bolivia, runway 10 at about 10:22 local time, collapsed. And the aircraft came to a stop on the center line of the runway, resting on the nose gear of both engines and the aft belly of the fuselage. The passengers disembarked onto the runway via mobile stairs. There were no injuries. The aircraft sustained substantial damage. And I think I was reading here, maybe in this article or another one, that one of the passengers said that everything seemed normal. And then let's see if I can find that quote here in the article. On December 10th, 2018, a passenger reported there were no indications of any trouble prior to touchdown. Initial touchdown was smooth. Then there was a loud noise and the aircraft shuddered violently. The passenger thought a tire had blown. An engine was scraping the runway surface. Ceiling panels and surface panels came down. After the aircraft came to a stop, there was silence. Smoke could be seen rising either side of the aircraft. A strong smell of burned rubber and hot metal developed on board. A flight attendant in the back attempted to put the ceiling panels back in place. Nothing to see here. And another flight attendant yelled to stop taking pictures.
Yeah.
No pictures, please. No pictures.
Yeah, no pictures. Come on. Nothing to see here. Firefighters arrived within a minute, foamed the aircraft. The captain came on about 5 minutes later. That's a little troubling to me. Hello? Why was the captain not on the PA a little bit earlier than 5 minutes later? Anyway, this is according to the passenger. Maybe the passenger didn't hear the captain initially. Came on about 5 minutes later, advising stairs would be brought to the aircraft, and it would take another 5 minutes until the stairs would arrive. All passengers remained calm throughout. After arrival of the stairs, passengers disembarked. The aircraft was about 3/4 of the way down the runway, and they were bused to the terminal. But that's all it says in this article from the Aviation Herald, at least so far. I guess they're doing their investigation, but it sounds to me like it landed normally, and then all of a sudden both main gear collapsed. And I don't understand how that happens unless somebody does some kind of pushes the override on the gear handle and puts the gear handle up. But then why did the nose wheel not collapse? So that doesn't really make sense either. And why anybody would do that, I don't understand. So
be interesting to see if the previous landings or some number of landings before
like
that
a
were
really super hard landing,
and they
yeah.
actually fractured something that wasn't caught.
Yeah.
But for both gear to come up simultaneously,
yeah, that's just
because I can understand one gear collapsing, but both of them. Now that smacks to me of them, the hydraulics being activated, them actually retracting. But again, Jeff, you're right. Yeah. Why wouldn't the nose wheel have come up as well? Unless
some kind of center lock, over center kind of a mechanism that would prevent that. Perhaps, I don't know. With the nose,
I guess I don't know, but it seems to me that yeah.
Hey,
I know we have main gear should have over centering as well.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. I know we have 737 pilots that listen to the show, and perhaps they can chime in with what they think might have happened here. But this article, this telling of the tale from the Aviation Herald, doesn't have any data whatsoever as to what they think may have happened.
Why do they bother with aircraft steps? You'd just need a soapbox, wouldn't you? And you could.
That's true. It's not a very.
No, the back of the
Especially
airplane.
the aft.
Yeah.
Just open the door and step out.
You know what though? Now it really makes a lot of sense. You ever notice the nacelles on the 737? They kind of are like flattened out on the bottom side.
Mhm.
It's because of landings like this.
They've all been flattened out from the hard landings.
Yeah.
All the flight attendants are out back going, mind the gap, mind the gap.
Mind the gap.
All right. Item G, Precision AT-72, which is not an Antonov. It's an ATR.
Well, that was an Antonov 74, and this is a.
Try to get the same.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah. What is
looking,
this aircraft
Who cares
manufacturer
what-
stuff?
Who cares what year it was built in? I don't mind.
What is the name of the? Come on, you can do this stuff.
Avion de Transport.
Yeah. Avion.
Avion. Is it French or is it some other language?
I don't. I'm not sure. I think it's French. Sounds French. The way you said
Avion
it.
de Transport. I don't know.
Yeah.
French, I don't really know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a consortium of various manufacturers, maybe French and Spanish or something, or Italian. I don't know.
I thought they were Canadian.
Wait, that's not right. I know that they're not.
Or Franco-Italian aircraft manager.
What is it?
Manufacturer. It's French-Italian.
French-Italian.
French and Italian.
I got one. Okay. Presumably performing flight 490. That's an interesting statement. Presumably performing flight 490 from
Allegedly.
Sources, unconfirmed sources say, from Dar es Salaam to Mwanza, Tanzania, landed in Mwanza when the aircraft flew or rolled through a flock of birds and received multiple bird strikes, causing the visibility through the windshield to be substantially reduced. The aircraft rolled out without further incident. A runway inspection showed countless bird remains on the runway surface. Also, there's a picture here that you'll see there were countless remains and evidence of bird strike on the fuselage of the airplane, the front, the nose, the whole nose cone, radome, windshield, lots of, I don't think that's part of their paint scheme.
It looks like those birds were related to lemmings, wasn't it? Because, I mean, they all seem to have flown straight at the front of the airplane and committed suicide on it. They're all hanging off the pitot probes.
Oh, yeah, it's a mess.
Temperature probes. Wow.
So this is what I thought of when I saw all these pictures, thinking, I hate to be the person that's in charge of cleaning this darn thing up, because they're going to be busy for a while.
Absolutely.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
Just get out the pressure washer. Just,
There you go.
There you go. Stick it down the pitot probe.
I like the close-ups of the feathers. Just like,
That can't hurt.
That's fine.
Yeah. So, yeah, check out this photo that we'll have in the show notes, and you'll see that, it was a significant bird strike.
Absolutely. I'm very pleased it happened on landing and not takeoff.
Yes.
And to be clear, we don't know what types of birds these ones were, correct?
No.
The other one was eagles. These ones are many.
They appear to be smaller birds.
Smaller, yeah.
And squishier.
I know what type they are. They're dead birds.
Dead birds. They're bloody birds.
Yeah, they are.
Watch out for the bloody birds. Sorry.
Give another beer. Well, just keep them coming.
We haven't even gotten to the meetup yet. That's sad.
Oh, well,
Okay.
Maybe don't then.
Maybe best for me not do that. H, Dallas bound flight returns to Seattle after human heart was left on board.
Hate to be the passenger walking out with that.
Hey, come on, have a heart.
Apparently I got an extra one.
Yeah. And isn't Southwest Airlines the one that has the heart? That's
yes,
a big part of their
Not ironic at
marketing.
all. Yeah.
It was
not
probably
ironic
one
at
of
all.
it was probably one of their management pilots. They don't have hearts.
Wow. That deserves. On Sunday afternoon, a Southwest Airlines flight bound for Dallas made a hairpin turn over eastern Idaho. Obviously, the person writing this article is not an aviation journalist.
No, it's a hairdresser.
Yeah. Or a Formula One
Race car driver.
Yeah,
Yeah,
race car reporter. Anyway, they headed back for Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. The reason, the captain told the passengers, someone forgot to unload a human heart. Dr. Andrew Gottschalk recalled that his fellow passengers went through a series of reactions to the news. The first, shock. A human heart being transported on a commercial carrier? But the next reaction was of kindness because everyone on board was happy to save a life, he said. The captain went on to explain that the heart should have been left in Seattle after an earlier flight from Sacramento. Then horror sank in, Gottschalk said, and some passengers with an internet connection began to research how long a heart could be viable for a transplant. Mere hours. Southwest confirmed that the flight had to return to Seattle on Sunday afternoon after officials realized the plane was still carrying a heart intended for delivery to a hospital. But additional details, including its intended destination and what it was being used for, remain unclear. Also unknown is whether anyone's life was ever in danger. Southwest Flight 3606 landed at SeaTac after about 3 hours in the air, and the life-critical cargo shipment was unloaded from the plane. Southwest spokesman Dan Lanson said by email. He added that Southwest made the decision to return because it was absolutely necessary to deliver the shipment to its destination in the Seattle area as quickly as possible. Let's see. It goes on to talk about how people in the medical industry were kind of astonished that, they used commercial transportation. But I've seen, I don't know about you, probably not so much you, Nick, with the long haul stuff. You probably never see this kind of thing, but short haul and medium haul, it's not unusual, and maybe happens once or twice a year, that we transport something critical like a heart or some kind of an organ for transplant. And the cool thing about it for us pilots is that we get to call ourselves a medevac flight, or a life, what do we call it? Medevac or life flight or something like that, medevac, in our call sign. And what that means is that we cannot accept any delays. And usually air traffic control is really good about giving us directs and, not giving us speed restrictions and that kind of thing when you use that in your call sign. And
so all these professionals, are on their best behavior to make sure the aircraft gets there on time, and a cargo loader leaves it on the airplane.
Yeah, that seems to be what happened here.
But I mean, I have to say, if it was something this precious, how come it wasn't being hand carried by a courier on board whose job it was to manacle it to his wrist and make sure it went from A to B as quickly as possible? I can't believe they left it for cargo guys to sort out.
If you look at or read the article, it's kind of like, there are a lot of inconsistencies with the story because
they don't mention what the actual protocol was for transporting this particular organ. Heart.
And they say that also that a lot of the people that they interviewed said they thought it was kind of odd because usually the life critical organ donations that they usually see come in via private jet. So
yeah, so who knows what the actual what it was going to be used for?
Yeah. What else would you use it
I'm not
for?
sure. I'm trying. I don't know. I don't deal with this is outside my area of expertise in medicine. So, but I can imagine perhaps it was something more research related, perhaps. Or if there were specific parts of the tissue they were going to be using, like valves or vessels. I don't know. Might not have been as time critical.
Yeah, so I guess there
as
are parts of the heart that they can use that maybe aren't so time sensitive or time critical.
I don't know. It just still seems strange that it wouldn't have been, as Nick said, with a courier, not in the cargo hold.
Right.
I can't imagine they would have done that with something that was very time sensitive or life critical.
Well, years ago, I saw this a lot on the 727. They'd bring up a big box, and it was eyeballs, like, human eyeballs harvested to, I don't know what they were going to do with them.
For lenses, perhaps?
I don't know what they were going to do with them. But anyway, it was we always made jokes like, they're going to have their eyes on you. But we put it in like the jump seat and strap it in. It was always in the cockpit. We never
Yeah.
put it down in the cargo hold. And then I don't know at what point it all changed, but we never see that anymore on any airplane that I fly.
It might just be the types of contracts they have for
Yeah.
that particular thing.
But I mean, it was a serious thing. They knew that you had this box of eyes or
Yeah.
eye.
Mike says corneas.
Yes.
That's better. That's really what I meant. Probably.
Yeah. Maybe that's what they were going to use them for. I don't know. Anyway, interesting story. Anything
I
else?
have no idea.
Yeah.
The eyes have it.
Yes, they do.
That's the call in Parliament when they have a vote.
Yeah.
The nays have it or the ayes have it.
Wow. Yeah, I agree, Dana. All right. With that, I think now it's time for us to move on to your feedback. Oops. Pushed the wrong button there.
Captain, incoming message.
And I must use the toilet facilities in my room. Otherwise, there's going to be a medical emergency here in the studio.
We'll leave it to Nick to. Oh no, Nick's leaving too. Bye,
And
Nick.
I'm trying to find where's the hangout window? It's just disappeared. I can't find it. Where'd it go? Is it? Oh, here. Wait, see if I can get my cursor up here. Yay! Got it. Okay. If you need to refresh your beverage, Steph, or
I'm going to do that.
okay, we'll be right back. You need to go. Hillel will entertain you.
Yeah. Let me get my phone.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So I have my phone. Sing us a song. Okay. How about if I play you a song my son wrote when he was 14?
This original composition from
my son when he was 14.
Wow. Nice. Very cool. Ooh. Fancy. Let me play a little bit of my original composition.
You didn't do that in the bathroom, did you?
Yes. Yes, I did. Is everybody ready to move on? .org?
Taco will be taking my place for the rest of the show.
Oh, Taco.
Hi, Taco.
Say something, Steph, so your screen shows up.
Hello. This is Taco. Taco's not sure why I'm holding
I
him
love
like this.
Taco.
He says, I see no food here for me to consume. You don't have my tennis ball.
Yeah, but I'm
quite
sure that he
boring.
loves that you're holding him. He
Yeah.
loves his mama.
He's giving me this look like I must escape now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. All right, go.
Oh, well, see you, Taco. I don't think he hears me. All right. Well, our last show, we attempted to play some audio from MBF, Matt Bunting Frame, in outside the Sydney area, I believe.
Melbourne.
Right? Oh, yeah, Melbourne. That's what I meant.
Currently in Edinburgh.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Or is he on his way back to?
No, he just got there.
Oh, he did. Okay. Oh, I misunderstood. I thought he had been there the whole time. Okay, just arriving there. Well, anyway, we refer to Matt as MBF, and he did an interview and had a little technical issue on the last show, so we decided we'd push it to this show. And I said, we're going to make it number one feedback. And so here we are. You're at the number one slot, Matt, with his interview with Evan Shu. And oops, I had to go over here. See, normally I'd play it from here, but nobody's going to hear anything. So let me do this. No, it's not that one. I know that makes sense. That would be that one, but no, it's this one. Here we go.
G'day everyone, MBF here. Just here with my mate Evan Shu. Today we're going to talk about something that happened a few weeks ago, and it's something that happens numerous places around the world. And for some people who are GA pilots who are unaware of these particular groups. G'day Evan, how are you, mate?
G'day, Matt. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. What's been happening? It has been a little while. What's been happening in your world?
Work. There, I guess the biggest thing that's happened recently is I got to go to Orange in New South Wales and attend an event.
What kind of event did you attend in Orange?
It's called the CPPP. So it's the Cirrus Pilot Proficiency Program.
Okay, so what is that?
So it's made by the Cirrus Owners and Pilots Association, so they're known as COPA. And
that's not to be confused with the Mexican airline, is it?
No, that's right. Yeah, so the COPA University organized these events around the world, and they do it sort of once every 2 years, I think, or once a year. But I was lucky enough to go up to the recent one in Orange and sort of represent my work, but also I got to have a look at some of the lectures and all that sort of stuff as well. So.
For those who are unaware, Evan is rated to fly the Cirrus SR20 and the SR22. So, so do COPA, is this like a worldwide thing here that they've decided to do in Australia, or is this just for Australian Cirrus owners and pilots?
Yeah, it's so they hold them all around the world. A lot of them are in the States because there's a lot of Cirrus owners in the States, but quite a lot in Europe as well. And they've had them in many other places. But every now and again, the Australian arm of the COPA will organise one in Australia, and the Cirrus University they travel down and they bring some of the actual factory trained Cirrus instructors. And there's two parts to it. There's the flying side of it and the sort of the safety lectures side of it. And I found it really actually uplifting and fascinating to attend all of the lectures, the safety lectures. And yeah, it's a very big focus on the safety and the improvement of your piloting skills and your decision making skills and all that sort of stuff.
So it's a case of it's an independent association from Cirrus, or is it actually designed by Cirrus for its owners?
No, it's actually, totally separate from Cirrus, but they do work closely with Cirrus. So it's they a symbiotic relationship, and it's designed to promote safety and good piloting and just basically improving your skills across the Cirrus fleet. And they invite Cirrus instructors. They call them CSIPs, so Cirrus Standardized Instructor Pilots. And so some of those come along. They also have special guests that do specialist lectures, but yeah, the if you're lucky enough, you can organise to go for a fly with these factory trained pilots. And so I didn't get involved in that side of it, but I did speak to the guys that came back and when they went flying and after they went flying, sorry, and they had a wonderful time.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
yeah, and Orange in New South Wales is it's a really lovely area, and it's perfectly like the Orange Aero Club was the host, and they've got some really good facilities, a good lecture theatre, and a nice area that you like a bar and stuff. So there was social aspect to it once all the lectures had finished, and also the the training aircraft could actually depart and go to adjacent airports around. So within 30 minutes flight, there was a whole selection of different aerodromes that were much quieter. So you could go and do circuit training at another quiet aerodrome and not get in each other's way. So basically everyone kind of headed in their own directions, went to an adjacent airfield and did all their practice and all the interesting stuff that they learned.
That's fantastic. That's a fantastic opportunity for people who fly, advanced general aviation aircraft, high powered
absolutely.
aircraft.
And I just went in there just hungry for information. So
what kind of lectures did you guys? What kind of lectures did Copa provide for the owners and pilots?
Well, they had like general safety overview stuff, like just promoting the use of the parachute, the CAP system, Cirrus airframe parachute system, and so that was more of a general thing. And then there was avionics training. So I went to one of the avionics stuff. So either they talk about the the
G1000.
Yeah, G1, the perspective system, and also the Avidyne system. So you could select which lecture you went to, because they would run 3 lectures at one go. So there was
on the same topic for different kinds of software or different kinds of avionics packages. So you wouldn't miss out on something. Yeah.
Well, there was always 3 lectures going on. So you basically looked at the list and selected which ones you'd go to.
Yep.
I went to the perspective one because I don't have any Avidyne aircraft available to me at the moment, but maybe in the future. So maybe it's something I'll look at later. I went to a lot of the engine management stuff because that doesn't matter what kind of aircraft you have. They will, all of the looking at the cylinder head temperatures, looking at the exhaust gas temperatures, what all that data means. And what it means to look after your engine really well, because there's the by the book, which is a very sort of an easy way to look at it. But if you look at the data, you can run it even better, sort of thing.
Gives you more. It's like more sets of eyes to be able to see accurately what's going on at what particular point in your engine to be able to maybe run some kind of further diagnostics.
Absolutely, and what to look for as an owner, and I'm a renter, so but I always want to know more about how the engine works and everything. So the technical lectures about the engines were fascinating because they brought in a lot of parts from the engines, and you could pull them apart and look at them, and they were obviously not real, like used today, discontinued parts. And we got to see exactly how the fuel pump system worked, exactly how the cylinder, the cylinder head. And one of the most fascinating lectures was all about a Borescope. So for those who don't know, that's basically putting a long skinny camera into the cylinder, and by way of manipulating which sort of direction it looks, you can actually look. It's got its own light source. You can see inside the cylinder and basically get an idea of the health of the cylinder and maybe get ahead of any issues that might be developing.
So the kinds of things that with a scope people might be looking for is for example, maybe discoloration in the face of the cylinder piston,
Yeah.
scoring of the actual bore. What else would they be looking for?
A lot of focus on the exhaust
Valves.
valve. That's the one.
Yep.
And yeah, basically looking at the color of it and the seating of it as it closes. So once you have the spark plug out, you can actually turn the engine quite easily because there's no compression.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, you turn it, and they showed videos that they'd taken of aircraft that had valve guides that were off, so the valve moved as it closed, and all sorts of interesting things. So just stuff that you wouldn't generally find, wouldn't be taught about in your basic flying school. It's more sort of expert and advanced stuff.
So I mean, but again, that kind of knowledge is so important if you're a GA pilot, because it's often you're up alone in an aircraft with limited horsepower, limited altitude, which is obviously what you need in order to try and save yourself if you've got a problem. So it's having an understanding of your engine is essential.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And just, with the modern avionics suites, you're generally presented with a heap of information. Making sense of it all can be a little bit bamboozling. So this kind of gave you some ideas of what to look at, what it looks like when it's wrong, what it looks like when it's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a fascinating thing. And I got to meet some of the American instructors. Very lovely people. I had a really good time. So I've been to a lot of fly-ins and stuff like that as part of my work. I work for a company that makes electronic flight bags. I found that some fly-ins, there's a lot of people that might have a bit of a gripe or a chip on their shoulder about some sort of issue that's come up over the years. But overall, this group was just all happy to be there, happy to be learning, just there because they want to, not because they had to felt like they had to or something like that. So everyone was just everyone was just in a really good mood. So I thought I thought it needed, I might share a little pirate for the other listeners out there. So I'm really thankful that you gave me the chance to talk about it.
Oh, mate, you're more than welcome. So of the topics that you listened to, and you discussed the mechanics and you've discussed some of the avionics, what do you think was the one that most impressed you, and the one that other than the mechanical one, what was the one that stood out in your mind the most?
Probably the engine management stuff was probably the most helpful to me, because you learn the basic theory behind it. That's fine, and you learn how the factory wants you to operate the aircraft. But then there's there's some more nuanced ways you can treat the engine to either make sure that the temperatures stay low, or what a lot of it was talking about the Goldilocks zone for the engine, because you don't want it to be too cold, you don't want it to be too hot either. So
we like it. We like our porridge, don't we?
Just right.
Just right.
Yeah. So just the discussions that people had about their particular experiences with their engine or engines, and just learning what not to do and stuff. It was just a really good eye-opening experience, and with people that really have a lot of knowledge and experience on the topics.
So for someone who, I don't own an aircraft and I'm just starting or revisiting my training to become a pilot, are there these types of organizations out there for GA pilots and other pilots?
There certainly are. There's a Beechcraft pilots group, and there's a Cessna owners group, and Lancer, and all sorts of like owners groups, RV groups. So there's more of them out there. yeah, this is the first one that I'd been lucky enough to attend. So I think it's worth visiting more of them.
If you're not as fortunate as for some to fly a Cirrus, but still enjoy your aviation and have different kinds of aircraft, reach out to these groups to try and gain knowledge about your aircraft. If you've just started as a pilot, I suppose one of the things out of this would be, try and get as much knowledge about what you fly as possible and reach out to these groups to learn more.
Oh, absolutely. I'd recommend getting in touch with the type groups of the aircraft that you fly, and yeah, just try and absorb as much knowledge as you can. I don't think there's any wasted knowledge.
No, indeed. So what's next for you, Evan?
I'll definitely be going back to this event next year or the year after, whenever it's held. And for me, it's we're coming up to the air show kind of season now. So I'm hoping to get to a few of those.
Of course, we've got Avalon coming up here in Southern Hemisphere next March.
Yeah, that's a big one for us.
So I suppose it's the key thing is, mate, you had a great time and you got to meet some really fantastic people and you learnt a lot because of this association about what you fly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I encourage anyone to, again, reach out and get in contact with your type club.
Indeed.
Definitely.
Now, these type clubs exist all around the world. So if you're listening to this, not specifically in Australia where we're recording, there are other owner groups and associations in the Northern Hemisphere and in Europe. So don't be afraid to reach out to these groups if you're starting out, or even if you are an experienced pilot, just to get some more knowledge and learn the nuances of your type, as Evan's alluded to make sure that you feel safer in what you fly.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Thanks, Evan, for joining me tonight. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, mate, and I look forward to our next adventure together.
Yeah, looking forward to going flying again soon.
All right, guys. This is Evan and MBF out.
Wow, what a great interview. And I knew nothing about COPA as it applies to Cirrus, which I thought was some kind of a cloud.
So COPA is a topic that you'll often hear up on Max Trescott's very, very good blog. If you're at all a GA pilot or interested in being a GA pilot or just GA flying, GA meaning general aviation. So that's the kind of flying that I do and that Steph does and a lot of other listeners do. That's where you're not paid to be a professional pilot, but it's still actually there are general aviation professional pilots. Then there's just it's not air transport pilots is what it amounts to. So a lot of the business pilot and corporate pilots are also GA. So COPA is one of several type specific organizations, and it's great to see that it's going strong enough in Australia to have an event down there. If you're interested at all in general aviation in Australia, the most recent episode of Max Trescott Aviation News Talk podcast has an interview with the head of AOPA in Australia. AOPA is in the United States is the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, and I'm assuming that they've changed there's no America in it, so Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association of Australia, and really fascinating conversation there about the challenges of general aviation in Australia in the most recent episode. So if I recommend his podcast in general, it's an excellent, very well-informed podcast. He's a great broadcaster, great producer, but it's just I was almost going to skip that episode because I don't fly in Australia, and I already have my predisposition against what some of the problems are when you overregulate aviation. But for a year ago, everybody was worried about the air traffic control being privatized in the United States, among other regulation challenges that we have. But that one episode will really crystallize for any listener what the some of the underlying issues, some of the things that lead to the problems, and the consequences, and what overregulation really, really looks like. And it's really sad that general aviation in Australia has been decimated because of overregulation in so many ways. But thanks to Evan and Matt, the interview shows that there's still some life left in general aviation in Australia, which is great. And the Cirrus Owners and Pilots Association, despite being based on Cirrus, they do a lot of really good things. So if there's an interest in becoming a general aviation pilot, definitely look for a local SCOPA chapter or some way of getting involved, because not that there's one near me, right, but there's a lot of good things that they do that are not just based on Cirrus. So
yeah,
can't be
sounds like the
serious.
kind of conference that I'd like to attend too.
Well, very interesting. And the point was made there that there are a lot of these types of groups out there that whether it be Cirrus or Mooney or Cessna or Piper or whatever, these owner groups that you really can benefit from attending these kind of conferences and stuff, and learning a lot about your airplane and its operation, and also just getting together with fellow aviation geeks is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Here.
And Copacabana.
That was coming.
Yeah.
I know,
I
I was
tried to
waiting
get that
for it,
in ages
waiting for
ago, but you guys were
muted?
listening.
Yeah, now I got you up. Sorry. Were you all saying things when I had to put her down?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I made that joke like 10 minutes ago.
Oh, did you?
We've been sitting
I'm
here
sure it
trying
was
to say
funnier
things
than when I
and
did it.
getting no response. Thanks, Jeff.
It's a new thing here. I'm still figuring out how it all works, and apparently I shouldn't touch this slider ever again.
I mean,
That's
we don't want to hear what we're saying.
Yeah, actually, maybe it was a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it recorded it anyway. So I get
Well,
to
it recorded it
some
on our recorders.
Yeah, but it may have
Well,
recorded
he
it
didn't
on mine too.
acknowledge what we were saying.
Who knows?
Sorry.
Anyway, I was saying it sounds like the type of conference that I'd like to attend.
Yeah.
I like conferences.
Yeah, I know you do.
I've never been to one. What are they like?
They're wonderful.
A lot of
Seem
snow
to be a
skiing.
lot of skiing and
A lot of skiing
hot
and-
tubs, snow
Yeah.
skiing, drinking.
Sitting around on beaches and drinking cocktails.
You know what we need to do is we need to really get tight with Max Trescott, get all of the APG invited to the Cirrus dinner that they do at the beginning of AirVenture.
Oh,
Oshkosh.
absolutely. AirVenture. Funny you should mention that.
Uh-oh.
We're going to be there next year.
Oh,
you going to be
awesome.
there?
I hope so.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Good. Yeah, we're planning a big party at the AirVenture this year. I know ABG is just a little teeny little part of it, but that's okay. We're happy to be there.
Well, we definitely need to get Glenn involved, because he and Glenn.
Oh, yeah.
Glenn and Dave Abbey know where every party happens all week long.
And we got them in our camp.
Yeah.
Well, at least Glenn. I'm not sure about Dave.
He's in the mailman camp.
No, Dave, we love you, man. I really appreciate his sense of humor.
If you don't take us to the party, I'll start dropping rubber bands everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
So moving on. Yeah.
Yes. Moving on. Number 2. That explains a lot. Steve sent us in our second feedback item, and it's a link to the 30th anniversary. Speaking of 30th anniversaries, victims of Pan Am Flight 103. And it talks about on December 21st, 2018, we're planning events to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the terrorist bombing that took the lives of 270 victims. Over the past 30 years, we have kept true to our original mission to discover the truth behind the bombing, seek justice for our loved ones, ensure the airline industry maintains and improves safety measures, educate the public about this incident, and support one another. The 30th anniversary memorial will be held at Arlington National Cemetery's Pan Am 103 Cairn on Friday, December 21st, 2018 at 1:30. Information about this you'll be able to find on our show notes for today's show. And this is from the organization Victims of Pan Am Flight 103.org. So it was a tragic event, and I'm glad that they're keeping the memory of it and the victims alive.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Steve. Greg sent in some feedback for Glaucus. And let me see here. I think I need to do this to play it.
Hello, Captains Jeff, Dana, and Nick, and Dr. Steph. This is Greg from Sydney in Australia with some feedback on episode 350 and specifically Glaucus's thoughts of a changing career. I'm not 100% sure if he's actually got the idea of how the supposed government assistance works. It's called HECS, or Higher Education Contribution Scheme. It comes into play for university students under certain conditions, and I suppose in the States you would call it a student loan. The government lets you defer the costs of your course until you have finished, and then you pay, once you start earning over a certain amount, you're automatically paying that amount back. Typically, well, as an example, my son, who did 2 degrees, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Engineering, his HECS fees were about $50,000, very similar to his girlfriends, who also did 2 degrees as well. So it gets up there, and it only covers theory. So if Glaucus enrolled in, say, a full-time degree with the University of New South Wales, as an example, who offer an aviation course, he could do a full-time degree, come out with a Bachelor of Science or Aviation or something, and a commercial license. The HECS fees on that, he would have to do it full-time, and the HECS fees on that would equate to somewhere around $120,000 to $130,000. Now, what happens then? He comes out, he's got 250 hours, he's got a multi-engine instrument rating, and that's it. Who's going to take him on? No airline. So now he has to start looking for work. Now, he did mention that he was about 40, married, his wife was a doctor, they had a couple of medical practices apparently. For him to get work, he's not going to find work if he's in Sydney. He's going to have to move around. He's going to have to get out in the country, try and find somewhere, flying various bits and pieces. I know of a guy who got his commercial license, and then he was young. He was only late teens, early 20s. He then moved from Sydney to Broome, which is diagonally across the country on the other side of the continent. And he started flying miners from Broome out to the various mine sites, initially in a 182, then a 210, then progressed onto twins. After about 6 or 7 years of doing that, he eventually now is working for Qantas in the right-hand seat of a Fokker 100, doing regional stuff around Western Australia. Glaucus did mention TAFE, or Technical and Further Education, which is somewhere between, TAFE courses sit between high school and universities. Now, in that particular case, the HECS or the assistance will only cover the theory side. There'll be no practical covered in that. So he's going to have to pay flying lessons out of his own pocket. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't kick in until he's got his PPL. So he can only do a commercial thing after that. So the whole idea is you can't enroll, get the deferring of the costs for the theory, and then only go to a PPL. It doesn't actually kick in until you want to go beyond a PPL. So to go and do a commercial rating. So the Glaucus, his friend said at 40 it's not going to work unless he's willing to do it full time and get stuck right into it. I mean, as I said, if he goes with Uni of New South Wales, it's a 4-year degree, so he's going to be nearly 45 when he gets out, or 44 anyway. And then he's got to rack up his hours. Now he'll come out, he can probably, once he's got his 250 up, I think you can do the ATPL theory without too much trouble. But now in Australia, airlines have sort of not really touched anyone with under 1,500 hours. I know of several people who had 2,000 hours and, couldn't get into the airlines. But it's up to him. I would definitely double check the facts on the government assistance, the HECS for a uni degree. I'm not sure. It's not called HECS, but it's a very similar thing. TAFE courses are usually state government run, whereas the HECS, being university, is all federal government. But double check, and I'm pretty sure it's going to sort of throw a spanner in the works. Especially, I mean, if he's willing to go on, then as I said, once he's come out with his commercial license, he's going to have to find work to build up his hours, and that's going to mean traveling, going to places, living there, doing odd flying jobs. Probably not going to get that many out of Sydney. So good luck, Glaucus, and this is Greg signing off.
Ouch.
Yeah, that.
What?
That
I don't know
hurt.
what you're talking about. Thank you, Greg, for
New sound effect you've got, Jeff.
yeah. Here, wait. I can't be laughing when I say thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg, for the great feedback for Glaucus regarding the educational program and the money for all of that. And apparently, it looks like Glaucus also heard from Grant, and he said that he's spoken to him last Saturday, took time away from his family to talk to me and give me some expert guidance. I will no longer pursue the path of the set education I initially had in mind, and will attempt to complete my training on my own pace with better and more passionate instructors. So sounds like the community, got together and came through and gave Glaucus some good advice as to where to go with his career progression. So
I love it. We've got so many well-educated and experienced listeners nowadays. You can get advice on almost anything from backache to how to get a flying career.
Exactly.
Indeed. I don't know if anyone's really coming to our show for information
Backaches?
about backaches.
Well,
that maybe
Well,
specifically.
they should. We have an expert, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know somebody that sticks sharp objects into people's backs.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's explain your job poorly.
I didn't do a very good job of it, did I?
Stab people in the back. Yeah.
She's a backstabber.
Professional backstabber.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. Again, thanks, Greg, for taking the time to record that audio for us and for Glaucus. Okay, let's continue with item number. Well, where are we now? About 2 hours or more?
Oh, a little bit past.
Oh, you know what? You know what that means, don't you?
I think so.
Yeah.
We can
Very
go to
excited.
bed.
Very
It
excited.
means that might be time for this week's installation or installment, or whatever you want to call it, of the Old Pilot's Plain Tales. And we're just going to have to wait for it to download completely.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales, Mare's Tails, and Woolly Fleece. On the side of a rather scruffy building in Bruce Grove, Tottenham, London, there has been attached one of the famous London blue plaques. Put there by English heritage, the blue plaques are a permanent sign to commemorate the link between a location and a famous person. This particular plaque remembers Luke Howard, a chemist, who lived there between the years of 1772 and 1864. I doubt that many will have heard of him, but for aviators, we use his legacy every time we fly. Luke Howard's father was a lamp maker who placed Luke in a Quaker grammar school where the headmaster was renowned for flogging dull students. Perhaps this was his motivation to do well, but regardless, Luke was able to become a pharmacist, serving an apprenticeship, and then starting his own chemist shop, or druggist, as those across the Atlantic would say, in Fleet Street, London. However, it wasn't Howard's hard work as a dispensing chemist that aviators should thank him for, but more his hobby. We don't know why an interest in this particular hobby, but it is thought to stem from the Great Fog, with 2 G's, of 1783. Howard developed a fascination for the strange haze that had filled the sky that summer and dimmed the sun to a dull yellow disk. The cause was the eruption of the Icelandic volcano, the craters of Laki, that had filled the atmosphere with dust and ash. The weather initially became very hot, with severe thunderstorms and hailstones big enough to kill cattle, but then the temperatures fell, causing a severe winter and a great frost which froze the River Thames in London. This phenomena, added to by the spectacle of a fiery meteor which flashed across the sky, captured the interest of the 11-year-old boy and started a lifelong quest to understand the sky that would eventually result in him being dubbed the father of meteorology. Howard became devoted to the study of the weather and made accurate observations for the rest of his life, augmenting his descriptions with readings from barometers and thermometers. Prior to the beginning of the 19th century, most weather observers believed that clouds were too transient, too changeable, and short-lived to be classified or even analyzed. With few exceptions, no cloud types were even named. They were just described by their color and form as each individual saw them. So not just white fluffy bunnies, but dark, white, grey, black, mare's tails, mackerel skies, woolly fleece, towers and castles, rocks and ox's eyes. Clouds were used in a few instances as forecast tools and in weather proverbs, but mostly by their state of darkness or color. Red sky in the morning, sailor take warning, and mackerel skies and mare's tails make lofty ships carry low sails. Like many, Howard was inspired by the Swedish taxonomist Carl von Linné, who had set about creating a classification system for all life forms. The system, which became known as the Linnaeus system, was one of the most significant scientific milestones of the 18th century. In the learned world, suddenly classification became a popular pastime, and many adopted the Linnaeus system into their area of expertise. For many years, Howard had been studying the atmosphere, and he believed he understood the way clouds interacted. He set about developing a classification system that he hoped would improve on fluffy bunnies, woolly fleece, and castles in the air. However, he was beaten to the punch by a dastardly French cloud watcher, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, who was, in 1802, the first to have his ideas published in a paper entitled On Cloud Form. Lamarck initially proposed 5 main types of clouds, which, to a casual observer like me, seem little better than fluffy bunnies. He suggested they be called hazy clouds, massed clouds, dappled clouds, broom-like clouds, and grouped clouds. Although he was to add to this list, it didn't make much of an impression on the scientists and naturalists at the time, particularly since his work and the names he gave to his clouds were even rather obscure in French. Later in the same year, though, Howard presented his paper to the Askesian Society, of which he was a founding member, entitled On the Modification of Clouds. A modern translation would be On the Classification of Clouds. Not only did Howard propose that one could identify clouds by several simple categories, but he followed Linnaeus's lead by giving them Latin names. Because of the prevalence of the Catholic Church across Europe and beyond, this made them understandable to the vast majority of European-derived cultures where Latin was understood. Howard believed all clouds belonged to three distinct groups: cumulus, convex or conical heaps increasing upwards from a horizontal base, wool-bag clouds; stratus, a widely extended horizontal sheet increasing from below; and cirrus, parallel flexuous fibers, extensible by increase in any or all directions. To denote a cloud in the act of condensation into rain, hail, or snow, he added a fourth category: nimbus, a rain cloud, a cloud or system of clouds from which rain is falling. The great advantage of Howard's system was that the descriptors could be combined to account for complex formations. So when cumulus clouds bunched together so that they became crowded in the sky, they became stratocumulus. He described other intermediate categories, such as occurred when small, well-defined, roundish masses were increasing from below, which became cirrocumulus. Howard's work made a big impression on those interested in the weather, particularly after his papers were reprinted in Thomas Foster's successful Researches about Atmospheric Phenomena in 1813. The classification system quickly gained wide acceptance, both in Britain and other countries. Amongst its biggest supporters was the German poet, philosopher, and scientist Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Goethe used the Howard classification in his weather journals and eventually dedicated 4 poems to Howard and his clouds. Others adopted his cloud names, like the master painters Turner and John Constable. They used Howard's descriptions to depict clouds with greater detail and accuracy. Howard's clouds even inspired Shelley's poem, The Cloud, from where I found words apt for an aviator. While I sleep in the arms of the blast, sublime on the towers of my skyey bowers, lightning my pilot sits, in a cavern under is fettered the thunder, it struggles and howls at fits. Over earth and ocean, with gentle motion, this pilot is guiding me. But why is it so important for modern aviators to have a knowledge of a system of cloud identification created in 1802? Well, a bit like flying into a cloud called rock or castle, flying into a cumulonimbus can have disastrous consequences. Inside a thunderstorm cell, there are forces at work that would worry the most overconfident daredevils. Powerful lightning strikes are lightly. Downdrafts can exceed 50 knots and wind gusts of over 60 knots occur. The turbulence alone might break apart an airliner, and the cloud supports hailstones that will cave in radomes and smash windshields. These clouds can contain supercooled water that will overwhelm the most capable anti-icing systems, and they are just in your average thunderstorm. Inside a supercell thunderstorm, updrafts as great as 87 knots have been recorded. Other clouds can be the harbinger of disaster. Lee waves or internal gravity waves are caused when an air mass is deflected upwards by a large obstacle, such as a mountain range. If the atmosphere is suitably, stably stratified, the deflected air will want to return to its original position, which causes a standing wave oscillation. This can be violent and stretch for hundreds of miles downwind of the source. Such phenomena have brought down aircraft, and if you want to listen to one such story, head back to the plain tale called Mount Fuji and Flight 911. The clouds that warn of lee waves, or mountain waves as they are often called, are smooth, curved, and properly named lenticularis, or lens clouds, that are created at the peak of each wave. If the atmosphere has layers of alternating dry and moist air, these clouds can be seen stacked the other. At the base of mountain waves, a rota of circulating air can form that can be particularly dangerous due to its strong downdrafts and proximity to the ground, not an ideal combination. Also known as a roll cloud, a rota cloud looks like a line of cumulus on the lee side and parallel to a ridge line. The cloud has a ragged downwind edge, and its base is near the same height as the high ground that caused it. The tops of a rota cloud can extend well above the ground and can merge with layers of lenticularis clouds above that. The turbulence and downdrafts that strong rotas cause are to be avoided at all costs. Virga is a visible area of rain that falls from a cloud, but evaporates before it reaches the ground. It's more correctly called a precipitation shaft. When virga falls from the base of a dark cloud, it can be a clear indication of a downdraft or even the more dangerous microburst. Inside a large cumulus, there are strong updrafts that carry rain up to the freezing levels of the troposphere, but what goes up must come down. When the circulation within the cloud takes this freezing mass on a downward path, it can burst out of the base of the cloud and continue down to hit ground level. The downburst is dangerous enough to landing aircraft, but it's what happens when this mass of air hits the ground and spreads out in all directions that can lead to a disastrous sequence of events when it is encountered on the approach. Small events are called microbursts, but larger ones exist that have been dubbed macrobursts. First, the pilot will encounter the leading edge of the wind, which causes them to rise above the glide path and their airspeed to increase. To counter the changes, the pilots will reduce power to get their speed back and increase their rate of descent to recover the glide path. They will then move into the center of the downdraft with a high rate of descent, lower power settings, and reducing airspeed. The downdraft will increase their descent rate, and the initial headwind will rapidly turn into an equally strong tailwind, robbing them of vital flying speed. With their engines at a low power setting, it may now be too late to recover before striking the ground. In the past, a number of accidents have been attributed to these dangerous meteorological events. Whilst virga is a strong indication of a downdraft, there can also be wet ones in heavy rain and dry ones from thunderstorms that produce little rain. They are all to be avoided. Low stratus and even fog are also forms of cloud. Here the dangers are multifaceted. You might simply be flying in clear air over a layer of low cloud and just not appreciate how close to the ground you are, such that a tall spire, tree, or mast might project up into your flight path, spoiling your whole day. Landing in foggy conditions must only be attempted with sufficient visibility, but even then there are pitfalls. Used to seeing the visual horizon in a certain position, when you catch sight of the runway on a foggy day, the shorter visibility depresses the horizon, making it appear lower than you are used to. In an attempt to put it back where you expect to see it, it will be natural to lower the nose, which isn't really something that will impress your passengers as you disappear into the undershoot. Luke Howard became a member of the Royal Society, and in addition to his seminal work on clouds, he left us a treasure trove of climatic observations that are used to compare changes in the atmosphere over the centuries. He was a pioneer of urban climatology, and he was the first to note the heat island effect that occurs in large cities, increasing the temperatures at night when compared to the surrounding countryside. His blue plaque simply states his fame as namer of clouds. In 2018, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, located near to his old house in Bruce Grove, named viewing areas in honor of his cloud names at the top of its east and west stands of its new stadium. These, with panoramic views of the pitch and across London, were named Stratus East and Stratus West. So the next time you read a METAR or TAF, or just gaze up into a cloud-filled sky, have a thought for the man who created the proper scientific names for those white fluffy things you fly through, and thank Luke Howard for not having a forecast read scattered woolly fleece at 2,000 and broken castles at 10,000. Oh, and watch out for the one type he failed to classify properly. Cumulogranite. That one can really spoil your day.
If you enjoyed this.
Yeah, you got to watch out for cumulogranite for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Those
need a
ones
special
are
kind of
more
plane to
solid.
go through those.
That's really interesting stuff. Yeah, I'm glad that we have our system now, not mare's tails and woolly fleece.
Oh, I don't know. I would have
like
quite
the
liked it.
description,
Yes.
I mean, just very creative, very imaginative. You can almost picture it.
You can.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
true. But then they would use some kind of
Not very
obscure.
standard, though.
They would use some kind of obscure abbreviation that would completely ruin everything.
Yeah, how do you abbreviate fluffy bunnies? I don't know.
FB.
FB.
Facebook.
FB.
I don't know.
Facebook feedback. Yeah. Anyway, excellent. Thank you, Nick, for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Good stuff. All right, let's move on. Looks like we have about a half an hour left in the show, and I believe we can get in some more feedback here. Steve sent us some audio feedback. So take it away, Steve. Okay, hang on. Steve is not talking for some reason. I know the reason.
Hi, everybody. Steve Andrus here. Since we like the movie Airplane, I thought I'd share this little story with you. Prior to leaving Seattle the other day, a flight attendant came up and she had with her a French horn that she said was too big for the overhead bin and wouldn't fit in the closet. And she asked if we could carry it up there with us. I said, sure. But before she went back, I said, make sure you tell the passenger that we'll have to use this if we go into the clouds because we'll be on instruments. Now, I thought that was funny. The FO seemed to think it was funny too. But then again, that's his job, to laugh at the captain's jokes. Well, thank you. Take care.
I thought it was funny too, but you need to have the rim shot in there and maybe some laughter as well. Well, I don't have it set up. Never mind. Oh, that's good. No, it's got to be more like, There you go. That's it. Exactly. Nailed it. But you're a very funny guy. Maybe a funny guy as well. Thank you, Steve, for that. Steve Andrews. Chris sent in some feedback, and he writes to us, as a newbie to the Airline Pilot Guy podcast, I want to thank you for your informative educating. Let me try that again. As a newbie to the Airline Pilot Guy podcast, I want to thank you for your informative, educating, and very occasionally humorous podcast. Wow.
Which one is he listening to?
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. One of the other ones we mentioned during the show. At other times.
Yeah. Well, he said very occasionally, so okay, it's probably ours. It helps me while away the hours while driving for work. Having only recently started listening, I'm starting to work my way through the episodes in reverse order, as once a week is not enough to satisfy my appetite. I was listening to episode 341 and the feedback, Nick Kidd's voice message, and his uncle's story from the previous episode's Plain Tales. I hadn't picked up on the name Kidd at this point. This will make sense later. I found this quickly resonated with the story of my grandfather when he mentioned the struggle his Uncle Jeff found dealing with the loss of his twin brother. My grandfather also lost his brother. They were both air crew, and although he never really spoke, all the family could tell he was still feeling the loss right up to his death a few years ago. This theory was all but confirmed when the family went through his belongings after he died, and we found that he always carried a picture of his brother in his wallet for over 60 years. He always carried his brother and the grief with him. As Nick's feedback went on, I was captivated with the story, and hearing the words twin, collision, supply drop, and Central France, my ears began to prick up. This sounds familiar, I thought. Listening further, and the story of how Nick's father found how his older brother was buried at
Marigny-les-Glaces.
Thank you. Following the collision, I now could not believe my ears. It can't be. I then repeated to myself, this person's name is Kidd. When Nick signed off with his name, I almost crashed the car. My great uncle was on that very same aircraft. My great uncle Charles Taylor, was wireless operator / air gunner on John Kidd's crew. We knew how he was killed and where he was buried. That his pilot, John, was a twin with a brother on the same squadron, etc. That was no surprise. What was of surprise is that this run-of-the-mill crew story made its way to a wider audience, no longer just a list of names on a list. Of all the stories in all the world. I quickly pulled over and listened to the previous episode's plain tale, and quickly emotion overtook me. I had often thought of that fateful night, but to hear it out loud was really something else. I was filled with sadness of hearing the story, but also immense pride that I'm a relative of an actual hero in the narrative. As Nick mentioned, what these people did at such a young age is incomprehensible, but I guess that was the attitude at the time. The great saying of, quote, keep calm and carry on comes to mind. It was just something they did, fighting to keep their families safe. I'm sure in some way they continue to keep their families safe. Let me elaborate. I'm married now. Nope. Let me put this up here so I can read it better instead of looking at my iPad. And I'll fix it in post.
Drink.
Yeah. I named my now 2.5-year-old son Charlie in his honor. Charlie was born with a rare congenital heart and liver condition, meaning 3 lengthy bypass operations in the first 2 years of his life. All naturally risky procedures with various projected degrees of success. I'm pleased to say that the outlook currently is positive and Charlie is doing really well. I have to say, I feel the success is partly due to great Uncle Charlie's looking down on little Charlie and helping him through, but mainly to what great Uncle Charlie, John Kidd, and his colleagues did for us and gave up, the ultimate sacrifice, so we can live in a world where great things like medical care happen in the first place. Now, I'm a little ashamed that while I've researched my great uncle Charlie's history to some extent, I haven't made any efforts to contact any of the families of the crew. I'd be really grateful if you could either pass on my details to Nick Kidd or his to me. I'd most dearly like to contact Nick. Also, feel free to read this message on a future episode if you wish, and that's what we're doing right now. Thank you in advance, and wishing you all clear skies, tailwinds, and IPAs en route. Yeah, cheers. Thank you. Kind regards, Chris Taylor. And that's a amazing connection. And Liz says that she'll take care of making sure that Nick and Charlie become reunited or together. They'll communicate with each other. So
It's the kind of story that just kind of gives you goosebumps a little bit, no?
It does.
When you
Oh,
read
God,
it, it's
yes.
such a small world.
Yeah,
but
I
how
mean,
amazing.
our listenership isn't so vast that I don't find this sort of thing absolutely incredible. A very touching story. It's not the first time, of course. One of the stories I found the son of one of the deceased pilots. Of course, is one of our listeners. I'm just amazed how small a world we live in as aviators, and I just love this kind of connection that we all have, and that now Chris will be able to perhaps get in touch with Nick and create a bigger circle.
absolutely. It's amazing that, that he wanted the 12. That's a real small or very small world.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steph.
Oh, no, I wasn't trying to say anything. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I think I bumped something that made it come back to my...
Okay. Well, no more profound thoughts from Steph.
No, I shared mine already.
Okay.
But I'm in amazement too. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's just thank you, Chris, for sharing that with us. And moving on, Bill Blaster Price, 737-8 Max feedback. He said, "Hello, Captain Jeff and crew. I very much hope your Thanksgiving holiday went well. I was listening to Colonel Jeff's feedback, the Lion Air 610 accident feedback and Max details, and wanted to offer an opinion as well. I've actually flown the 737-8 Max 56 times, but who's counting? And have grown to really enjoy it. It's a very modern upgrade to the Boeing 737-800NG with all the details Colonel Jeff described, and really flies nicely. It also lands easier and smoother than an NG. The LEAP 1B engines are massive and is a huge power/performance/fuel efficient upgrade from the CFM 56-7Bs. I also discovered our 1.5 hour training online via iPad was sufficient to introduce us to the Max features versus the NG. Any 737 NG pilot could get into a Max and fly it with no difficulty. After the tragic Flight 610 accident in Indonesia, I decided to switch off the autopilot and auto throttle on my next leg in the Max to see how the jet feels using only pitch power inputs. It's very stable, and with gear and flaps up at our current weight, used about 6.5 degrees nose up with approximately 75% N1, which gave us 250 knots indicated. I was confident if the stabilizer did run away, we could fly the aircraft without automation and return to the airport using only manual trim inputs. After completing our quick reference card checklist, the manual stab trim switches would be moved to cutoff, and these switches are easily reached by either pilot below the flap handle. Captain Nick asked, would the stabilizer stop movement if you were to engage the electric trim switches in the opposite direction? Yes, they will, but Boeing says the stabilizer could re-engage after 5 seconds. Therefore, taking stab trim switches to cutout was critical to remove the automatic inputs to the stabilizer using manual stab trim wheel inputs only. Merely holding the control wheel up while the stabilizer trims down will not be sufficient to control the aircraft. Flying using manual trim wheel is sufficient, and I've actually landed other Boeing aircraft with manual trim only. Hopefully, more details of this horrible Lion Air accident will come out, and the industry will learn valuable lessons from it. Our only question to the manufacturer would be, are there any other systems on the MAX, such as the MCAS, that we don't know about? Captain Nick's stick pusher, a la Hawker Siddeley Trident, was a great idea. Kind regards, Blaster Bill in Los Angeles, California. And he sent us a PS as well. In reference to Sam's comment about beer, water plus hops plus yeast plus barley equals beer. Yes, in its basic form, that's for sure. Thank you, Bill, for sending the feedback. Sorry I missed you. He was in Atlanta, I think about a week ago, and was on a trip or had some kind of other something going on. So I think that he said he owes me a breakfast at Waffle House. So I definitely want to make sure that
Take him up on that for sure.
any excuse to have a Waffle House breakfast will be good. Any comments regarding the that particular piece of feedback?
No, just good to get some firsthand information from someone who's flying the plane.
Yep.
And thinking about it critically too. Appreciate that.
Right.
Yeah,
It's something
it's-
that doesn't happen here very often.
This sort of incident, although it obviously is an appalling accident, and you would hope it wouldn't really need this kind of an event to bring it to every pilot's attention. The one thing it has done is brought it to the attention of every 737 pilot, I think, probably in the world. As a result, the likelihood of there being a second one are incredibly remote, which is great. But of course, we've been so much nicer if it had just come out in training notes and with a big red, bold face saying, this can happen, do this.
Was that my bandwidth or Nick's?
I think it was yours.
Okay,
I don't know.
sorry.
You have been a little hiccupy.
Oh, sorry.
That's the one.
Yeah. Well, it's done all right so far.
No, it hasn't been too bad. Just every once in a while, Nick and I have to wait for a moment and just make sure it's going to come back.
Well, at least we
so
have
far
your-
it has. It's been fine.
Well, we have your recorded stuff, so that's good. Good to fall back on that. All right. Item 7, Gabriel. He starts off by saying, parenthetically, my apologies for the email I sent earlier. Gmail thought I clicked send. I think he also said something about sending in some feedback regarding or using the website page and it not reaching us. And I'm thinking, I'm wondering if that is broken, because that used to be a way for people to send in feedback. And I'm wondering if,
I don't know. Maybe I should give it a try.
maybe we need to test that.
Test run.
In fact, I earlier today I sent a test, and I'm looking in my feedback now. I don't see my test message.
I'll send one right now and see if it works.
Okay. So, thank you for pointing out that apparently that our messaging system via the website is not working. That's no good. Anyway, we'll continue with Gabriel's feedback. He says, hello, Captain Jeff, Captain Nick, Captain Steph, and Captain Dana. It's Gabriel again. Here is how my last week has been. Just to clarify, this is not going to be a huge, long email of everything that has happened in the past week. I went to ground school on the weekend, and we studied meteorology. Why do I have such trouble with that word? Meteorology. Directly after, I had booked some time on the Academy simulator. I flew out of the our regional airport, to Vancouver International and did some traffic patterns there. Now, before you go and ask Mr. Google where Charlie Yankee Victor Romeo is, I'd already translated it. I will first tell you that no, it's not legal to do traffic patterns at this international airport in the Cessna 150. Why not? Seems like it would be. Well, here in the U.S. it would be legal. May not be smart. But,
Right. I mean,
I don't know. Maybe Canadian rules are different.
There may be like, they have to pay for use and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But it'd still be legal, though, right? Just expensive. Anyway, back on topic. We flew back to our regional airport again, did a few patterns there. On my third, my instructor said that he needed to get something and hopped out of the cockpit. As I'm on downwind, well, a few Canadian geese appear and hit my engine. Now, picture this. We have two runways running parallel to each other, running east and west, runways 826, and one running north and south, 3618. As the pattern for runway 8 right is to the right, I was passing runway 36. I circled around and executed a landing in a very smoky cockpit. I was run through multiple emergency scenarios, including, but not limited to, complete whiteout at 300 feet up on landing, 300 feet up on landing, vertigo, engine throttle failure, where the RPM guns it and you can't control it. On my regular landing, I was on short final when I noticed deer on the runway. This was not my instructor's doing, but mere stupidity of X-Plane 9. Now to answer your questions. When I was listening to your podcast live, I was on a lunch break and also simulating. I don't like to call it a game, on X-Plane 11, and it was not very easy to fly the plane as well as reply to your questions in chat. Gabriel, you have to have your priorities, you know?
Crew resource management.
Yes, chat is more important than flying X-Plane 11. Yes, RPP does stand for Recreational Pilot Permit. I've never heard of SPL. I guess that's the sport pilot license. Yeah. Yes, I had made the mistake of sending you directly through your website. So, Steph, you said you sent something. I don't see anything from Steph via the website.
I just sent it.
Oh, okay.
I
Maybe
expected it to arrive already, but
Let me see. I'm going to look at all mail. Maybe Gmail is what?
Refresh.
Okay. Nope. Nada. And I sent my test message like 3 hours ago or something. So yeah, it's broken. Thank you, Gabriel, for pointing that out. We'll have to talk with Arash and see if he can figure out what's going on. Okay, back to Gabriel's feedback. Captain, oh, thank you. Good thing Hillel's here. He's pointing at where I should start. Yes. No. Now, if there's enough time to share this, it's something a bit funny, annoying, that does relate to aviation. I came home the other day to find a courier had delivered my Christmas present, an airplane yoke for use in a flight simulator, not in the courier's box. Well, I just found out my birthday 2 weeks early. So I guess somehow it came out of the box or whatever. It was supposed to be a surprise. Now, one question. Captain Jeff, was the MD-88 that I asked Mr. Google about in your command? So I'm not sure. That's the thing I'm not. Do you remember what he was talking about, Nick or Steph?
I have no idea. I don't remember.
I remember him talking about asking Mr. Google about the airline for which I fly, Acme.
It was a particular airframe he was talking about, I think.
Oh,
it was an aircraft that had an incident.
Well, that could be me because I don't ever have incidents.
Well, that's it. I've never heard you talk about an incident except when you couldn't get your damn gear up.
Yep, that's the only time that.
Yeah. And this guy had an engine failure, I think, or something. So I'm thinking it probably wasn't you.
Not on the 88.
No, you're squeaky clean. You know, as pure as driven snow.
You got that right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Gabriel is in the chat room. He says the MD-88 in Atlanta. Okay. Well,
that narrows it down.
Yeah.
None there at all, normally.
If it has anything to do with what Nick is talking about, the fact that we took off and I couldn't get the gear to retract. And I think I was talking with Mr. Happy on air traffic control that day. Yeah, that was me. But so that's my claim to fame on.
Did he understand you when you said, I'm not declaring an emergency, or?
I think so. Yeah.
Because he should have said, are you declaring a pan or a mayday?
Yeah, he should have, Nick.
Yeah. Yeah. It just shows what Mr. Happy knows.
I'm not going to get into it. Okay. He says, cue the Jaws music. I never had a chance to fix or get some Jaws music going on. He said,
I was going to say, do we have Jaws music?
Nick's doing it. A great job. Okay, cue the Jaws music. Go. Right, and then he has the APG syndrome. Okay, you can stop doing the Jaws. Wow. This is really an amazingly creative episode. She says, so he has the APG syndrome. Sorry, Gabriel. Now I really should wrap this up. Thank you so much for the answers to my questions last week, and I'll try to join you next time live. And he did, because he's there right
There
now.
he
I can
is.
see him in the chat room.
Whoop, there it is.
Gabriel, fancy getting a yoke instead of a side stick? What's the matter? God.
You would have had to pay probably less
Yeah.
postage for the
Those cheap
side
Airbus
stick.
side sticks. They're cheap as chips.
Or you could go to Home Depot. Remember, we talked about this on an
Oh,
earlier
yeah.
show.
And get the
little
stick
yellow.
plunger.
Yeah, that's probably a lot
Mhm.
less expensive.
Yeah, it wouldn't work quite as well. But
I hear they still sell those Atari joystick for Atari 2600s
Oh, yeah?
on eBay.
Oh, cool.
Interesting.
Finally, Sean says, caution, your airline meal may include bullets. And he says, only BA could screw this up. Well, and that's him saying that, not me. So
yeah.
BA, don't get mad at me. So passenger Dr. Michael Brown was traveling from Heathrow to Chicago on business class when he noticed a very strange addition to the menu. Traveling business class means you get a special menu of restaurant quality food, often with exotic ingredients. But you'd never expect to end up with fragments of bullets in your dinner. And so now there's a little...
Why not?
So
If
obviously...
you're getting game that's been shot. I mean, you guys shoot a lot of deer in the States, don't you? And you use shotgun to shoot partridge, pheasant, all sorts of birds that you eat.
I don't
Well,
think
you're
that... Go ahead,
supposed
Steph.
you're supposed to prepare the food. I mean, I guess if you've shot it, especially with a shotgun or something, you expect to perhaps find bullet fragments. A lot of hunters that are hunting for their own game and meat will use bow and arrow. So there's less risk
Get
of
bits of wood in your deer.
A big arrow.
I guess.
Arrow stick.
Well,
Yeah.
archery.
I mean, it's a standard thing. If you're buying genuine game from a game butcher, it's common to have something that a hunter will have shot, and the butcher will prepare it. But they can never be 100% certain that they won't have left a tiny pellet or perhaps a tiny bit of a bullet or whatever in the meat. It's kind of indication that this hasn't been a farm bred animal. This was a wild animal that was shot, and as such, its meat is to be treasured because of its its quality compared with something that might have been reared in a huge farm.
Absolutely. I think that, most of the food that we're going to see on an airplane is, heavily processed and, farmed in a commercial
farm
farm.
raised anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So you're
Hey,
not
good
like...
for-
So
good
I'm
for this
going to
airline
defend B. I'm
having
not a
a-
great... Sorry, Steph?
I said good for this airline for having fresh to the airplane food.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
agree.
I'm going to defend BA on this, and I think
think,
this chap is a grinning buffoon.
I think so too. I
Well,
think
he lives
that-
in North Carolina, so
Oh, there you go. And he's probably... Was he... Oh, he's doctor.
Yeah.
Is he a medical doctor or a PhD doctor?
No, medical doctors are nice people.
Must be a PhD guy.
don't hang out with enough of us.
Yeah.
Well, certainly all the ones I've met.
Yes.
I'm thinking that if I saw that, I would think that this is very special, what I'm having here on my
I
menu.
would probably order it.
Yeah. And just be careful biting down too hard.
Bring a magnet.
Yeah.
Well, they've warned you. I don't know. What
They
do you
have?
expect?
Oh, Dr. Michael Brown, what are we going to do with you?
And it comes with, you see, home counters. That's the south half. Venison stew, rosemary dumplings, roasted chestnut. It sounds lovely. Not too sure about wilted kale, but I'm not hugely fond of kale. But no, that sounds
I like
very
kale.
nice dish.
Not wilted kale, like kale chips, though. Very good.
So what I don't get here is that, especially somebody being an American, it seems to me that they would be the last people to be surprised by that little blurb on the menu, right? Because we're the ones that have all the guns. all the hunters.
Exactly. Yeah.
He probably
Yeah, but
didn't
that's-
grow up in North Carolina.
Yeah, I think maybe he's never left the city.
Yeah, it doesn't say what part. It's
Yeah.
probably from down the road from me.
Probably
City
Steph's
dweller.
neighbor.
Probably lives in.
Anyway.
I don't know.
So,
They have his picture here, but it doesn't look familiar to me. So
Research triangle.
yeah. I mean, he's got a nice mustache.
Raleigh area. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be illegal in Acme.
I think you're right. Well, yeah, I
Extends
guess
too
regular.
far
Well
beyond
beyond the
the.
corners of the mouth.
Yeah. Although I have seen a guy that is like so out of regulations that it's like you look at it, you almost want to laugh. I mean, it's like it's an awesome mustache, but you're going, really? Wow, you're really pushing it, and I like it. Anyway, so thank you, Sean, for pointing this out, and I think we all agree we're on British Airways side there.
Yeah.
Airways side. All right, I think that's going to do it. Did I get everything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I understand why there wasn't too many items in the feedback, because I think Liz knew that you guys were going to do something special at the beginning of the show. Very clever. Anyway, thanks again for that, by the way, for helping me celebrate my 30th anniversary with Acme. And let's see. If you want to learn more about the show, you can head over to the Airline Pilot Guy website. And we have apps for your iOS and Android devices, and we're also on social media.
You can head over to Twitter, use the handle @APGCrew, and find all of us there. Interact with us in 280 characters or less. You can also head over to facebook.com/Airline Pilot Guy. Lots of community interaction there. People sharing aviation stories and meetup information. Mostly managed by Nick and Liz, but if you send us stuff there, it will get to us to
No, it
whoever
won't.
you. No. Well, Nick is apparently now guarding all of it, and Nick will get your information. And if
we
it's meant for one of the
never
rest of
pass
us,
anything on. No,
maybe you should head over to Twitter. Anyway, for more information about
Facebook thing.
meetups and other community interaction, in person today, hello.
Here I am.
Come on. Oh,
There.
here he's right here. Okay,
here.
let me move out of the way.
So we are using Slack, if you can see that there. Slack is an app. It works on your phone or your tablet or your PC, or just if you want to use it in a browser. And it makes it a lot easier to coordinate and communicate our meetings or what's going on. We've got several different channels, so you can send in ideas for plane tails. You can talk about going to Oshkosh, or next year to go, actually 2 years from now, to go to Farnborough. And you can also get updates on what's going on with the crew in Slack. To get into Slack, you need to send me an email. The easiest way to do that is to send it to SLACK, that's Slack @airlinepilotguy.com. And if you don't have email because you still live in the 18th century, you may want to use Twitter, which I don't know how that would work either. But if you send me a tweet to HI11E1, my handle is Twitter HI11E1, and simply include a way to get in touch with you or send me your email that way, and I can send you an invitation into Slack. And it doesn't cost anything, and it's a great way to find out what's going on with the crew. And that's how we've communicated about today's meetup and any other future meetups. There's actually one tomorrow, if you're listening live, with Captain Dana, who's going to be also in Baltimore. And I think F.O. Craig and maybe Robert Fairbairn and a few others who are going to go out to dinner tomorrow night right here in Baltimore. So
nice.
If you are interested in keeping tabs on what's going on or being part of the community, just join us in Slack.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for heading up that effort.
Pleasure.
And by the way, any of those emails that he mentioned, they just go into cyberspace and nobody ever sees them.
Much like your feedback on Facebook.
Much like the website
Scrolls them
feedback.
all away, never to be seen again. Well, the website feedback, we actually have no idea where that's going at the
So
moment.
I was wondering why our feedback is really starting to fall off.
Exactly.
No idea where that's going. We're not ignoring you on purpose anyway.
Yeah, it'll be sitting in some outbox somewhere, or some inbox, I should
We
say.
never have technical difficulties. I don't know why.
Never. You're right. And so had a great show with you all today. It's always a lot of fun to get together with the crew and the community. And just another reminder, if you ever see the notification via either the app push notification messages or our APG crew Twitter account or Facebook, and we announce that we're going to be recording the show live, you really owe it to yourself to be a part of it, because it's a lot of fun. Great people in the chat room every week, and I think you'll really enjoy it. And you might even actually hear some of the show, maybe. So
You can
no.
always listen later.
That's true. That's true because we record this.
Spend your whole life with the APG.
That's right. What else is there?
There isn't.
Okay. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Adios.
Brilliant!
Was it? It was. It
Brilliant!
No, it was more like.
Talons, Douglas. Says
Talons,
Lane.
Douglas. Oh, yeah, you can pull that out.
That's mine. Feel it.
Wait, what?
Wow. Oh, yeah, I'm looking down. Yeah, go ahead and pull it out.
I feel it.
Oh, we're still online. Oops.
Without context, that was
Feel this.
very awkward.
Wow, it's really warm, Hillel.
I got a hot plug.
Yes, you do. Oh gosh. And now APG After Dark.
Yeah. That's what usually happens, folks. Just
I need to get some of that
devolves from here quickly.
that Triple X music that Carlos has.
Right. Brown chicken brown cow.
Oh boy. Oh hey, we need to get going, don't we?
Yeah.
If we're going to walk over to our meetup location, we need to leave like right now.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I guess that's the end of that.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you again. Really, that meant a lot to me. Thank you for the surprise and congrats for the 30 years. And
well, we just can't believe you stuck it. But there you go.
yeah, I know. You know, when I first was hired, I thought that I'd be retiring after 30 years because that was the mandatory retirement age, 60.
All right.
So this would be my retirement month. So I'd beat you, Nick.
You have. I just find it remarkable you stay with an airline with such an awful logo.
Thank you.
It's all about the logo.
It's is that what he's complaining about? The logo? We used to have a much nicer logo until we merged.
Well, Acme, it's always been the same, isn't it? Pair of wings with Acme in the middle.
There you go. That's
yeah,
a good
that's a
logo.
great logo. What are you talking
about?
I don't know.
I
My
was
company's
just-
logo is particularly uninspiring. I think.
Pull it his leg.
Yeah, I know. Well, everybody, thanks again for being with us for the live show. And we're going to attempt to do this mess again sometime next week, hopefully. So,
Hopefully I'm feeling a bit better next week.
yeah, I hope so
hope so
too.
too.
Yeah, you look like you're a little pale or something. You
Oh,
might
I'm
need to-
ready for no, I'm hot. I'm ready for bed.
Yeah, it's kind of late for you. Get some sleep. Get better.
It's just 10 o'clock, but
Yeah. Well,
getting
I'm
all
gonna go
achy
for
now.
a 6-mile run.
Oh,
What?
Lord. Only 6 miles. Steph, what's the money? You're slacking.
Today's a relative rest day.
Relative rest
yeah,
day.
6
All
mile
relatives are resting.
That would be for me too. Yeah,
That would
6
be my
miles.
last run ever.
Rest in peace.
That's right.
Oh, well, have a good run, Steph. And
right, thanks.
thank you, everybody, for being with us in the chat room. And we're going to go ahead and stop the
absolutely.
podcast and talk to you soon.
Bye.
Cheers.